Okay, it is 6 o'clock. Welcome to the September 12th meeting of the governing body. I will call this meeting to order. If you will give your attention to Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, who will provide the invocation and introduction. Stand as you are able, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. If Pastor Jeanette Cook could come up to the podium. I want to introduce Pastor Jeanette. She has been the lead pastor of Oakland Church of the Nazarene for the past year. Jeanette is a bivocational pastor and has worked for USPS Information Technology for 32 years in various roles, currently as an IT program manager for technology quality assurance. She enjoys preaching and teaching the Word of God with conviction and simplicity to promote understanding of all ages and circumstances. Pastor Jeanette is a woman who loves God, God's people, and His Word. Pastor Jeanette has been married to Dave Cook for 31 years. Dave's daughter has blessed them with 3 beautiful grandchildren. Dave and Jeanette have a heart for compassionate ministry, seeking to share the message of love and hope in Jesus Christ with those underprivileged, downtrodden, and victimized people, young and old.
Right, good evening. Let us pray. Thank you, Father, on behalf of all who gathered to meet today at this council meeting. Thank you for the privilege of praying for them today. I pray that you bless each one of them and keep us all safe. We look to your words in Ecclesiastes 4:9 for inspiration tonight. 2 are better than 1 because they have good return for their labor. Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. So Lord, please bless each council member this evening. Let them work together in unity for the needs of Topeka. Let them work in accord, not easily broken. Together, make them productive and efficient. Lord, please grant wisdom for them in the time of uncertainty and clarity in the times of confusion. Lord, give them a heart of wisdom, and may your wisdom produce in them creative ideas, solutions to problems. May you give them sound counsel and good judgment to make decisions. Give them a common decisiveness to move far on key critical issues. Grant them grace and let the decisions be morally righteous for the good of Topeka. Lord, convict them through your Holy Spirit to be patient with each other, respectful, and may we all be quick to listen and slow to speak. Father God, I ask that you provide the council members the skill and desire to be good stewards over the human, financial, ecological, and physical needs of the city of Topeka. Let this city council be a blessing and a compassionate outreach to all the sick, oppressed, homeless, rich and poor and average, lonely and lost, and the criminal advocates. Lord, please let your face shine down upon them tonight as they meet, and for all that's here. In Jesus' precious name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor. Okay. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Mayor Padilla,
Here.
Councilmembers Hill. Here. Valdivia Alcala,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Hill,
Here.
Nager, Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Hofer.
Here.
We have 9 present.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to the second agenda item. We have 2 mayoral proclamations this evening. The first is in acknowledging Welcoming Week. I have a few people here that if you care to join me up here at the mic while I read the proclamation, then I'll be able to give it to you. Now, for purposes of a photo opportunity, if you come on up this way. Circle around our next semi. Everybody knows who Maddie saw is at the back of her head. Okay, good evening. This is a proclamation by the mayor. Whereas Topeka, the capital city of Kansas, we do not thrive as a community if our residents do not feel safe and welcomed or feel that they belong. Today, new residents are what makes this community vibrant. New bring fresh ideas and perspectives. They start businesses and contribute to the melting pot of cultures that help make this city home. And whereas this week, we honor and celebrate new and current residents coming together and celebrate everything that makes Topeka great. Welcome Week is a time where members of the community can form new friendships and experience the beauty in meeting someone different. While differences can divide, they can also bring people together. As a united community, we can achieve greater prosperity and help others find the support Topeka has to offer. And whereas together we can build a stronger Topeka, one where we recognize the contributions and uniqueness we all have that make Topeka vibrant and is a place where diverse people from around the world feel valued, safe, and know that they belong. And whereas let us as a city, as a community, as a neighbor, as a friend, and as a person come together to build communities where all of us have the opportunity to be our best. Let us come together to create a more prosperous, vibrant community, a community that does not fear differences, but finds the value in them. Let us come together to reassured that Kansas still stands as a beacon of freedom and opportunity. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do proclaim the week of September 8th to September 17th, 2023 as Welcoming Week. In the city of Topeka, Kansas, I encourage the citizens of Topeka to join in this celebration. In witness thereof, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the City of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the City of Topeka, Kansas on this day, the 12th of September, 2023. Carol?
Thank you, Mayor Padilla, for this proclamation. The Human Relations Commission is celebrating Welcoming Week for the very first time. Through Welcoming Week, we hope to bring together neighbors of all backgrounds to build strong connections and affirm the importance of welcoming inclusive spaces, such as Topeka, to achieve collective prosperity. We will continue to honor and celebrate new and current residents in our communities with the hope of creating a greater Topeka where everyone can reach their fullest potential.
And these are members of the HRC, correct?
Yes.
If you want to, you certainly can introduce them.
Can I let everyone introduce themselves? Okay. I am Carol Roberts, the chairperson of the Human Relations Commission.
I am Carmen Romero-Nichols. I'm the vice chair.
I'm Sean McGimsey. I'm just a member.
I am Pamela James, and I'm also just a member.
Hello, I'm Alexis Simmons, and I am also just a member.
I am Marisol Marcelo, and I'm also a member.
I want to thank you all for serving on the committee and doing the work that you're doing.
Mayor, if I may.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor, governing body members. Also, just speaking on Welcoming Week proclamation, as we celebrate this week, Welcoming Week in Topeka, one of the initiatives we're celebrating this evening is the graduation of the city's Newcomers Academy. The city partnered with Top City Promise, a local nonprofit organization, to kick off an 8-week academy where 20 Ukrainian refugees who are new to Topeka participated in this academy. And so the academy really hosted different city departments as well as community members such as the Greater Topeka Partnership, Washburn University, and others to basically deliver information so that we can further integrate these folks in our community. And so we thank our city departments for their contributions in this program, Top City Promise, our staff, and other community members for making this possible. So our goal really is to welcome and integrate newcomers in our community by opening venues of communication with city officials and others, and provide them with a tangible knowledge of civic engagement. So I'll hand it off to Jana for a few words, and then we'd like to introduce or take a photo with you and the class.
Sure, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Yana Ross, and I'm president of Top City Promise, nonprofit that worked closely with City of Topeka, Ernesto and Zaina on Newcomers Academy. And I just want to tell you all thank you, and especially Ernesto and Zaina that put the program together, and all the departments that were there to lead the class through the operations of the city. And we're patient to answer their questions because a lot of things are different here. And so we just appreciate everyone's time and the opportunity for 20 of these Ukrainian refugees to be, as Ernesto said, more integrated into the city. Thank you.
We'll just take a quick photo with you,
Yeah, I'd
and
like to see
that'd be
more
great.
up there. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Hi, how are you? Good to see you again. Good to see you again. Good to see you again. Together your way.
Можно на плечи смотрим.
Бочком.
Бочком? А от тогда бочком.
Вийовочкою.
Як в класі, знаєш? ти
Да, да.
перший. Ну, це вже вечір.
Это вы уже фантазируете. Куда смотреть?
1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
From the next song. Okay, we have a second proclamation, and we have a number of people from the KLAC, Kansas Hispanic and Latin American Affairs Commission, in the audience today to receive this proclamation. So if you would join me up here, I would appreciate it. Your name again? Hi, Richard. This is in recognition of National Hispanic Heritage Month. So I wanted to read this proclamation this evening. By the mayor, whereas National Hispanic Heritage Month is celebrated on September 15th through October 15th, and the 16th of September celebrates Mexican Independence Day. The observation started in 1968 as Hispanic Heritage Week and was expanded by President Ronald Reagan in 1988 to cover the month at which it is celebrated today. And whereas understanding that September 15th is significant because it is the anniversary of independence from Latin American countries. The city of Topeka is greatly enriched by those of Hispanic descent who have made Topeka their home and continues to grow businesses and create employment opportunities in the city of Topeka and throughout our country, and play a critical role in innovating and strengthening our community and economy. And whereas Topeka residents treasure the colorful Hispanic American culture and traditions that have become a part of Topeka's heritage. And whereas the city of Topeka affirms the principles of equality and inclusion for persons of Hispanic descent as set in the laws of the state of Kansas and ordinances of the city of Topeka. Now, therefore, I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the city of Topeka, Kansas, do proclaim September 15th through October 15th, 2023 as Hispanic Heritage Month and September 16th as Mexican Independence Day, and called the public officials, educators, librarians, and all Topekans to observe this month with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and programs. In witness whereof I, Michael A. Padilla, Mayor of the city of Topeka, Kansas, do hereby affix my official signature and the official seal of the city of Topeka, Kansas on this day of September 12th, 2023. And I think I have the chair and the vice chair here. Chair, if you'd like to introduce yourself and have a few comments.
Yes, my name is Monica Vargas Huertas. I am the chair of the Kansas Hispanic and Latin American Commission appointed by Governor Laura Kelly. I thank you, Mayor Padilla, and to the honorable members of the City Council for this recognition to all the efforts and everything that Hispanic and Latinos bring to the state and the city of Topeka. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Veronica Padilla, and I am the vice chair of the Kansas Hispanic Latin American Commission. I do want to say thank you to the city of Topeka. We haven't had one of these for quite some time, and so I'm very, very happy that we were able to get this from the city of Topeka. We hope to represent our citizens from here as well as across the state, and encourage everyone to enjoy the month and enjoy Welcoming Week. So thank you very much.
You good? All right, everybody to the wheelbarrow, right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we get a picture?
Oh, yeah. Squeeze in here next to the shark. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk?
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Spencer Duncan granting Christ the King Catholic Church an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at SEEK concerning noise prohibitions. B is approval of a public works engineering contract between the City of Topeka and SBB Engineering in an amount not to exceed $188,880 for engineering services for project T701063. C is approval of a professional services contract exceeding $50,000 between the city and Henson, Hutton, Medrick, Gregson, and Vogelsberg to represent the city in a civil lawsuit. D are minutes of the regular meeting of September 5, and there are no applications.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just wanted to check and make sure your mic was on because your voice wasn't carrying.
Sorry. I'll speak up.
That's okay.
Move approval.
Okay, so motion to approve by Deputy Mayor Dobler, second by Councilman Duncan. Call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
and Emerson.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried. Move to action, agenda item 4, action items, 4A, if the clerk will read.
A is a public hearing regarding the petition filed by Michael and Elizabeth Cromwell to vacate a portion of an existing 16-foot wide public sanitary sewer easement, and an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Richard Neinstead relating to the partial vacation of a 16-foot wide sanitary sewer easement located on Lot 1, Block A, Helping Hands Humane Society Subdivision at 2625 Northwest Rochester Road to allow for a building expansion and alignment of the sanitary sewer line serving the new building addition.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, this is a ministerial responsibility on your part, for the most part. This request has been through Utilities, Public Works, and Community Development. And to explain it in a little bit more detail is Dan Warner.
Mr. Warner.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, governing body. Good to see you again. So this first vacation request is to vacate a platted 16-foot wide sanitary sewer easement and also a 16-foot wide prescriptive easement that's held by the City of Topeka. Those public sewer easements are no longer needed by the City of Topeka. The applicant wishes to construct a new building that would be over those easements, so that's why we're vacating those with this action. City of Topeka Utilities and Public Works Department do not object to the proposed vacation.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Warner? Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Warner, I'm in no way opposed to this. Just a question, though. Are things like this not something that can be done administratively, or?
So there was a discussion with the city attorney's office about that prescriptive easement that's on that property, and it was determined that the best way to deal with that was through this vacation process with the governing body, because it couldn't be done through a plat. So we just combined both of them and are bringing them to you. So that was a determination by the legal department.
Okay, thank you.
And vacations under state law specifically have to be done by the governing body.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Further questions? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I thought this was Harold's Tire Shop. Why does it say Helping Hands on what am I missing here?
Perhaps that's a mistake. That is the same property that was purchased by Harold's Tire. So yeah, it's for Harold's Tire.
Okay, so because I thought Mike, he bought that from Helping Hands when he built that out there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Pardon?
I'll move to approve.
I have to open the public hearing first, and then you can jump right in there. Okay, at this time, I will open a public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak to the matter. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. I recognize the governing body members for any motion.
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilwoman Hofer, second by Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. Call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
and Kell.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's been carried. We'll move to action item 4B. Brenda, if you'll read.
B is a public hearing regarding the petition filed by Clay Sherwood Reynolds LLC to vacate a public alley right-of-way and an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Richard Neinstead relating to the vacation of a 20-foot wide public alley extending east and west and located between properties lying at 410 Southwest 6th Avenue and 523 Southwest Harrison Street in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, this is another statutory responsibility of yours, which you are required to approve, and it involves the vacation of 20 feet of a public alley, and Mr. Warner will walk you through this one also.
Dan?
Thank you, City Manager. So the applicant in this case is requesting vacation of 150 feet of a 20-foot wide public alley access between two properties that he owns that front Southwest Harrison and Southwest 6th Avenue. Vacation of the alley will enable the owner to install a security fence across that alley. The owner will provide a public utility easement needed by the city of Topeka and Evergy to maintain their public assets underneath that concrete. And city and county departments and public utility agencies were given the opportunity to review the proposed vacation and have no objection to it.
Any questions for Mr. Warner? Okay. I will now open the public hearing for this item. Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter? Is there anyone present who would like to speak to the matter?
That's Mr. Sherwood.
Mr. Warner?
I'm sorry.
Is there anyone present who wants to speak to the matter? Okay, step forward, sir. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Clay Sherwood. I am the owner of Clay Sherwood Rentals. When I proposed the application to the city that the vacation would not carry public utilities, that would block or hinder any type of expansion of the warehousing. The only sewer that is under that alley is an 8-inch sewer that feeds my building only. It feeds no other public or no other entities on the block or any other place around it. I did put on the application, no, I was not willing to do that. I would still like to present the, you do the vacation for me. I'm going to take over the sewer, the maintenance of the alley, and everything there. So if we need to reapplication this, then by all means, I would, if that's what we need to do.
Mr. Warner?
So I think if it's possible to postpone the action on this for a week and see if we can sort this out, make sure everybody understands what we're doing here tonight. If that's possible, I would suggest doing that.
Mr. Councilman Emerson?
Mayor, if I guess I would, I'd move that we postpone consideration of this to next week's meeting.
Next week's agenda?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, first you need to close the hearing, and then you could make a motion to postpone.
Okay. So then, not being any other persons wishing to speak to the matter, the public hearing is closed. Now a governing body can make a motion.
Yes, Mayor, I would move that we
Defer
this to next week's agenda, please.
Is there a second? Second from Councilman Kell? If you'll do, Councilwoman Hiller.
If I could just double check, it looks like this was a surprise. Dan, are you sure that just 1 week is enough time?
I think we can sort out the issue and then perhaps we'll need more time if we're not agreeing on everything here. So, right, there could be maybe setting it for when we're ready to come back. Is that a possibility?
I think we have to be specific when we defer. If it doesn't come back, we're not going to.
It's okay. I mean, if the thing to do is put it on next week and then bounce it forward, if not, I just wanted to check. Sounds like there might be some questions.
I hope we can get it done.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't have to take any action anyway, it shows up.
Right.
So, okay. So we're going to defer to next week's agenda. So if you take a roll call, please.
So, council members Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
and Nager.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Motion is carried to defer. We'll move now to action item C. If clerk will read.
C is acceptance of land dedications in the final plat for Elk Lake Shawnee Subdivision located at 3440 Southeast 29th Street within the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City manager.
Mayor and governing body, this is another one of those functions that you have to do. You have to actually physically accept a final plat. It has all the easements and all those things on it. It will require your signature. And Mr. Warner, again, gets to lead you through this discussion.
All right, thank you, City Manager. So subdivision plat this time. So this is a 2-lot plat intended for the development of 26 dwellings contained on about 3 acres. Multifamily zoning for this property was approved in 2020. So the Planning Commission approved the plat at its July 17th public meeting by a vote of 6-0. Before the plat can be recorded, the governing body must take action to accept dedications of land and public purposes identified in the plat.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Warner? Hearing none, is there a motion to entertain?
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilman Emerson, second by Deputy Mayor Dobler. If you call the roll, please.
Council members Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
and Dobler.
Yes.
We have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay, motion's carried. We'll move on to action item 4D. Brenda?
D is appropriation ordinance introduced by interim city manager Richard Neinstead, approving and adopting the operating budget for the city of Topeka for the year 2024 and appropriating the amounts for the purposes set forth therein.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, it seems like you've spent all summer on the budget, and in reality, you have. But you've put it together. This is really the last step for you before approving the appropriations ordinance for 2024. This is your last chance to ask questions, make changes at this point. Now, does that mean you can't make changes after you adopt it? You can, but this is also a good opportunity for you to ask questions, be comfortable with the 2024 budget, and I will turn it over to Freddie and Adam.
Ready?
Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body, good evening. I stand before you to present a budget summary that reflects our commitment to financial management. This budget allocation has been carefully crafted to address the diverse needs of the city of Topeka. Can I have the slide? No. Here's one. Okay. I had a, okay. Well, the slide that I presented, that I have for you, the first slide was a summary that reflects the city of Topeka budget. Well, there are many areas in the budget that are significantly important. There was a few that I wanted to highlight for you tonight. That one, yep. That one, yep, that's it. One, the proposed City of Topeka budget includes a $1.5 million savings in property tax. Two, this proposed budget includes a $300,000 funding for a property tax support for the city, for the members of the community, as well as the utilization of $2 million in general fund reserves. There's a slide, that one. Next one, please. Next slide. So this slide represents the City of Topeka budget by the specific outcomes that you as a governing body member determined that they were the priority for the city. So you wanted to focus on housing, you wanted to focus on community appearance, and you wanted to focus on growth. So this is the representation of the budget distributed for those outcomes. Next slide. And this is potentially the easiest slide to read and potentially one of the most important ones, because this one represents what $1 of public funding provides in terms of City of Topeka services. So first and foremost, we recognize that the fundamental importance of providing clean and reliable water. Therefore, for every dollar in spending, 31 cents of the city budget are used to produce and to distribute clean and safe water. And the utility department is integral in the safety and daily life of all Topeka residents. Now, next, with 20 cents for every dollar allocated for public works, we are investing in the infrastructure that keeps our city moving. These maintains the roads, these manage waste, and these provide essential resources for all the people in Topeka. Public safety, it's paramount, which is why our budget has 15 cents for every dollar to our dedicated police force and 12 cents dedicated to our heroic firefighters. To ensure smooth operation of the city government, 19 cents is allocated for general city operations. Finally, we do set aside 3% for planning and development, and this investment is crucial for our city's future growth, and it allowed us to build a better, more sustainable tomorrow for generations to come. So in conclusion, the budget represents our commitment to a balanced and equitable and distribution of resources. We prioritize the need, the residents, we invest in public safety, and we lay the foundation for a proper future. So I do appreciate it. This was a brief summary. I try to keep it under 6 slides, but hopefully represented more than 4 months of work. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Questions from the governing body? Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Freddie, you and I and the city manager had been exchanging some emails about questions I had, specifically concerning the email of concern and non-support for what went from $30,000 to now $75,000 for the SAVE program for the 2024 budget. And I just informed you that I was going to ask you questions about that. I have also gathered some information from the chief on our crime stats, which are a bit concerning to me. So specifically, I just wanted to know, because the public needs to know, because this is their money, when did that 30 jump up to 75, 30,000 to 75,000, and what was the catalyst for that?
So I believe that there are representatives from the SAVE organization here that might be able to expand on the need of the topic. So if you would not mind, would it be okay if I allow them to come?
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. My name is Lindsay Anderson, and I am the SAVE project manager with the Shawnee County District Attorney's Office. And we have been asked to come tonight to answer some of the questions regarding the increase requests in the budget for the SAVE program. I also have with me Dawn McWilliams for the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club, who actually houses the Service and Outreach Coordinator position. And she can speak a little bit more about the request of the increase. So specifically, the Shawnee County Commissioners approved my position under the District Attorney's budget in November of 2020. And so we have been operating the SAVE program under Shawnee County, under the District Attorney's budget for the last 3.5 years. In early 2022, we had partnered with the Boys and Girls Club to house what is called the Service and Outreach Coordinator's position. And so originally, when we had presented to the city for that position, it was part-time. Due to the growth of the program so quickly with the amount of youth that we are serving right now, the need for that person to be full-time happened almost immediately. And so myself, D.A. Kage, and Dawn McWilliams went and spoke with the city over the summer months and said, we are to the point now where we are expanding. We are in need of additional support staff members. And so that is where the request from the $30,000 to the $75,000 came about.
Okay, thank you for that. Do you know historically how much you've gotten from the city since 2020? Isn't that when the SAVE program launched?
Yeah, so we have received a total of $40,000 from the city. $10,000 was actually allocated to us from law enforcement's budget, and then the other $30,000 came from the city. And then this summer, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a $40,000 commitment as well. So a total of, yeah. So it's been a total of, it would be a total of 50,000 or 40,000 this year, and then the previous year was 30,000, 10 from Topeka Police Department, and 20 from the city.
Okay,
So a total to this point has been 70,000.
70,000,
Yeah.
and then that
Over
does.
the span of 2 years.
Okay, and that does not include the increase of 75,000 that you're asking for?
No.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, but this is for the 2024. Yeah. So
Right.
we've already received the 40,000
Right.
for this fiscal year.
So I don't know who I'm asking this question to, or voicing my concern to, because Topeka Jump and probably over 30 organizations had been involved in this program from the beginning. Before it launched, there were 2 years where a consultant was hired. There was a program that was taken from a number of states that showed crime reduction through not dealing with youth, but dealing with the cases as they happen, with an on-the-street approach. And I don't know if you were there then and you can give a better insight into it or what have you, but Topeka Jump's concern, as well as a number of other organizations that are community-driven and grassroots-driven, was that the whole program changed and there was no communication, there was no updates, and this is no longer, to my understanding, a community-driven approach. We are continuing to see an increase in crimes. We are continuing to see an increase in shootings. And I will say that normally I wouldn't get so deeply into this, but when I have shootings occurring in my district that are unsolved, where there are 30 rounds of bullets that are being shot off at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church, which could have killed seniors if they would have woken up maybe half an hour or an hour earlier, right before German Fest, where we had to have additional security at German Fest, additional security at the Fiesta, and I see these numbers that the chief gives me, then this becomes a problem to me. Because what it shows to me is that, number one, what started out as a proven track record of crime reduction, shootings, homicides, what was put 2 years' worth of investment and then was dismantled and is turned into a youth program, which that was not what the GVI process was of SAVE, and here we are. My concern is that this is money being pushed over into a program that, as far as I'm aware, and if I'm wrong, then I will take that, has not had any continuous updates here to the city council for us giving this money. This is taxpayer money. And more on all the social media pages you see in this city are the issues with crime, and it is increasing. And so I do not support this, because when I see over 30 organizations that have worked 2 years on this, and we're basically shut out from what media sources say, this isn't me. I'm going back and I'm looking at the articles from WIBW, I'm looking at the articles from CJ Online, and I show a continued uptick in crime, then I have concerns. Anytime community that is trying to solve an issue is taken out of the picture and not given updates, that is concerning to me. So I appreciate your updates. I mean, I just, want to let folks know, because I think that they need to know that in 2023, year to date, there have been 23 homicides. In 2023, shooting victims to date have been 70. In 2023, shooting incidents to date have been 61. We have bumped up on all levels, according to the information that the chief gave me from last year. And I don't know what kind of information we are requesting as a city when these funds are being given out to show what the outcomes are, what it is that is being worked on and addressed when this money is handed over. But this does not seem, at this point, a good investment to me. And so I've set up meetings with Topeka Jump and some of the other organizations to find out the crux of what the concern is. I understand that working with our youth is so important. My family has a long history of that as volunteers, unpaid volunteers of working with youth. So I get it. And so I have a deep, deep concern that this program took such a different approach after all the work that the community had put into it. And I am not seeing or hearing anything that would make me believe that this $75,000 should be considered. With that said, I don't know how to do this, city manager or city attorney, because it's only my 4th budget. But I want to see what it takes to have this removed. I don't know if it can be removed as a line item, and see if we can come down to a vote on this. But the concerns I have with the issues that we're having with crimes, with the program that had already been laid out and then was dismantled, and nothing that we really have to show for this, I can't support this particular amount. And I don't know if removing a line item is possible or something that gets voted on. If someone could please let me know.
It is always possible during the budget for you to make a motion to reallocate that money to somewhere else or remove it from the budget.
Okay. I know that last week when we were talking about the unsheltered and the concerns about putting $1 million right into a fund when we didn't know what a plan was yet. And I understand, then the mayor's concern is we have to get ready to do something, and I understand that. And hopefully we'll have some dialogue on that tonight. With this, my concern is I don't know what an alternative is. So my motion would be to have it removed from, I don't know if there's any organization at this time that I have enough confidence to put anything in when we're looking at the increase in crime like we are. So can it just be put back into the general fund? I mean, help me out here.
Yes, you could. Adam, what appropriate fund would you recommend? I feel like I should let the budget person answer that.
Sure. So with removal of the $75,000, again, you could either add $75,000 to anywhere within the general fund's budget, or you would reduce the revenue in the general fund by $75,000, which would look like a slight adjustment to the mill levy lower.
I don't know if my colleagues are going to have any feedback on this or if there's even any appetite for this. I know that this is not probably, yeah. So I'm just going to put that, unless, we have some dialogue about where else it could be put, I'm going to be, just that it be taken out and reduction of the budget until we can get a sense on, where we're going. I think that there's been some good things that have been done. I mean, I know Chief has worked, and our CPOs have been working hard in our neighborhoods, but this is not how this program was originally meant to be. And if I could be looking at figures in front of me that showed where the reductions, that we were seeing since 2020, that there was a continuous reduction, as were the models that this citywide team of community grassroots organizations were working on that showed the reduction. Information about annual or semi-annual updates being given from the DA's office that we can have to look at, and I have none of that. So it would be different then, and I have none of that. So I would make a motion to take it out of the line item and put it back, or do a decrease of the budget, and understand that I'm serious in my commitment because I've already started lining up meetings to meet with organizations to look at what their thoughts, what their insights are as to what went wrong in their opinion and how we move forward together as a community, rather than one specific office or one specific organization, how we move together as a community. And that would be my motion.
We had one other councilman who wanted to speak to that item, but you've got a motion on the floor, so we need a second.
I'll second so we can continue to discuss.
Second by Councilwoman Nager. Councilman Kell.
For years, I've been saying if you want to stop a problem, you need to stop it with the youth. I see it. I used to see it all the time when I worked at the docking building. Jaywalking would be a situation where you'd see all these adults get stopped by the police officer, stopped, and you kept on getting this issue. And then all of a sudden the high schoolers would do it and they'd stop traffic. And the officers, when I asked the officers, like, why don't you stop the high schoolers? And they're like, because we don't want to get them in trouble with their parents. And I was like, well, if you want to stop to be a problem, you need to stop it in the youth, not when they're older and try to get something stopped. So I believe the Boys and Girls Club has a direct link, a direct impact on the youth. And if we want to get problems and things go in the right direction, Topeka, we need to start with our youth. You start getting too many of these organizations that don't have that direct contact, and all they're going to have is summits and meetings, and there's not going to have that direct impact that we're looking for as a city. So I believe that we should stick with the Boys and Girls Club, give it a year. We can always, check it here in a year, get updates throughout the year from them to make sure that they are doing what we're wanting them to do and head in the direction that we want them to head into. But I like I said before, if you want to fix a problem, you fix it with the youth, and things will change because some people are just old and set in their ways, and they're not going to change. So if you can get the youth to change, you can get a lot change. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I don't know what old has to do with it.
I'm stuck in my ways.
Question for the city manager or perhaps the city attorney. Do we have any kind of contract, anything that covers the current $30,000? Or do we just give them $30,000?
Deputy Mayor, governing body, we don't have a contract. I did ask that, I think, yesterday or today, if we even had an MOU. And I would tell you, I think anytime you allocate money to an outside organization, you should have an MOU. But I have a question I'd like to ask, if that's possible. Yeah. So the money we allocate, is there a dollar for dollar match out of the DA's office?
Yes.
Okay.
So right now, Shawnee County, through the district attorney's budget, has allocated $90,000, which covers my position and then other operation funds out of the district attorney's office. We also are receiving funds from the Kansas Department of Corrections through a grant that was allocated to the Boys and Girls Club. I also would like Dawn to come up here to speak more about her agency and those use of funds. But also back to a comment made earlier about dollars that have been allocated to this program. SAVE was awarded a $300,000 grant from the Topeka Community Foundation. We did hire a national network for safe communities out of John Jay College in New York. They did an 18-month contract with the SAVE program, and it was determined through law enforcement. Chief Willis can speak to this as well because he was at the table and present for the entirety of this. We did an extensive dive into the crime in Topeka, and it was a consensus across the district attorney's office, law enforcement, school districts, Boys and Girls Club, anybody that's working with at-risk youth and that at-risk population in our community, that the focus should be on the youth. Over the course of the last 2 years since SAVE has been activated, I can tell you right now, we have almost 60 kids on our caseload. They are from all of the school districts in Shawnee County and the city of Topeka, so 501 Shawnee Heights, Washburn Rural, Seaman. We even have a couple of kids from private schools in Topeka that have been referred, that have been identified from school resource officers, community members, principals, teachers, people that are saying, hey, we're seeing this child start to track in the direction that could get them involved in risky behavior, and we think it's time for you to provide intervention. I've also brought along with us a family member who has been a part of SAVE and has their has been impacted from what SAVE does. So if we could have the opportunity to allow Dawn to speak on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club, and then also another person that has been impacted positively by SAVE, I think that could be helpful to answer some questions as well.
If I may.
City Manager.
I appreciate that answer. I think that the councilwoman has some legitimate questions, and I think they're questions that I had too, because I'm not familiar with the program. But what I do know is it's another program that we can cooperate on, and we can help reduce the crime level, not overnight, but with especially a certain age group. And I'd suggest this, that, and this happens, it's no one's fault, it's just that you get comfortable with the program. I suggest you get people back to the table that need to be back at the table with this program. I suggest that we call on the good office of the city attorney to help draft, in cooperation with her counterpart across the street, an MOU that all parties can sign, and we actually have some goals, some strategic goals in there, some strategic deliverables in there, and get this back on track.
Councilwoman Valdivia.
Thank you. I think if people would take the time to look at what the SAVE initiative and the GVI index actually started with, this group that came in that we're working with a number of organizations that deal with all different levels of individuals, races, creeds, colors. This report said that there were cities such as Boston, Cincinnati, and Indianapolis that this SAVE model was built on, that showed a reduction in homicides and shootings in their municipalities, some by half. It also states in this report that 0.4% of Topeka's population is associated with almost 50% of homicides and non-fatal shootings. These are adults. We know that we have wonderful programs that interweave, that interface with our youth, and that should always be as it is. There's any number of programs and dollars, but again, I'm going to stress the number of Topeka organizations that were involved in implementing this, and that were basically, from what I am hearing, allegedly were booted out of it and not given updates on anything, does not speak to a community-driven approach. It speaks to a silo approach, an insular approach. And if anything that I've learned in the small amount of time that I've been on council is it takes us all, including those community organizations that were deeply involved in this for 2 years. And so what is it that we're looking at? Again, 0.4% of almost 50% of the crimes are committed by the same adults in the city. The way that the GVI was introduced to the people that were involved, the organizations involved for 2 years, was that when the crime occurred or when something happened and they could interact with the families of this individual involved, a community street outreach team was to wrap around these individuals, these families, and through any number of known, worked out methods was the approach that they were to take with these adults that they knew were a small cadre of individuals. For some reason, this changed in totality. I'm not professing even to understand why. But for some reason as well, Topeka Jump has been the only one to speak up. When you look at the articles, and the 30-some organizations were having issues with it, but were not identify themselves specifically, which leads me to believe there may have been some fear of speaking out. That has to stop, because then how are we going to heal and get our community better if we're afraid to speak up? So again, I'm just saying the information is there, the 2 years, the organizations are there, Jump is there. Jump is not the perfect entity. None of us, no organization is, none of us are as individuals. And I'm just telling you that I have concerns. Thank you.
Councilman Kell.
My big thing is what was said was at-risk youth. It's if you don't have someone there for these at-risk youth, then they become those adults that are committing these crimes. If they don't have that mentor to look at, and I was an at-risk youth. I luckily had some great mentors in my life that pulled me away from those people, those entities, those adults I might be looking up to and saying, okay, look what they're doing and look how boneheaded they are. And like I said, sometimes you got to break that cycle at the youth level. And when you're looking at-risk youth, their model that they're looking up to, sometimes it is that person that are out there committing that crimes, and they're looking, look what they did. Look what respect they have now out in the streets. I want that. So I'm gonna keep on, beating the drum that we need to work with our youth if we want to fix a problem. It may not fix it overnight. It may not fix it in 10 years, but past that, once they're getting into adulthood, looking what they can do and what cycle they might have broken, you're gonna see a lot more changes in our society than if you're trying to break them down every single time that, they're getting in trouble. Like, oh, look at this person. And I worked in corrections. I've worked at a prison. It's hard to change some of their philosophies of people that have committed crimes that, okay, yes, I understand we're dealing with those crimes right now, but it's hard to get those people to change sometimes. And I'm all for if someone wants to change, let them change, help them change, but some of them don't want to change. And I think the easiest thing to do is work with our youth directly and have that direct link, that direct touch to them and say, this is not the way you need to go down in your life, by looking at the people that are what the issue is right now. Thank you.
I'd like to hear from Don, if I may. If you'd step forward, Don.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to, present and try to defend why we should have the $75,000. What I'd like to ask is that there's a lot of misinformation. Those people who yell the loudest get the most attention. The folks that we're serving, they're children, but they are children of adults who have committed violent crimes. We have one dad who has just been released from prison that has 5 kids. He is a single dad. A, we're trying to keep those kids out of foster care, and B, we're trying to stabilize that family because dad wants to take the responsibility of raising his children. That's part of SAVE. Again, I think that there's a lot of misinformation. I was part of the initial planning meetings 2 years ago. I've always been at the table. I have sat and watched a lot of discussions With all due respect, Topeka is not Boston. Topeka is not Chicago. We've really looked at what are some of the unique challenges and issues of our city and tried to respond to that because there was no action happening for 2 years. We started working with the SAVE program actively in 2022. We were the third provider to be considered a partner. I do have to say that I've seen some very, very successful things happen as a result of the program. I would just like the opportunity for you all to learn more about the program. I, too, am very uncomfortable that there's no formal MOU. I have a board member here, so I have to speak to my board on why did we jump into this program without a formality? We jumped into this program because we know Shawnee County has one of the highest populations of kids in foster care. Shawnee County has one of the highest populations of homeless youth. Those are all trajectories to where the kids are headed. And it is vital that we not step and continue to have conversations around meetings, but take action. And that's exactly what we have done. And I would love the opportunity to articulate what that looks like. But I think what's most important is Mr. Leroy is a member of JUMP. I don't know of the other 29 organizations that are not in favor of what we are doing in our community. And I would be happy to meet with them just as I met with the representatives of JUMP to understand what we're doing that they're not supportive of. Because our goal is to work with the community to make a brighter future, to invest in kids so that our community is richer, is more vibrant, because it's our kids that are going to be the decision of that. Mr. Leroy is a direct recipient of violent crime. He is in custody of his grandchildren. He is a member of JUMP. He is a participant of SAVE. And I think it's really important for you all to hear how that's impacted him as a citizen of your community.
Thank you, Dawn. Mr. Leroy, would you care to step forward, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. How are you doing? It's been a while since I've been here. I'm retired from the city of Topeka. Yes, I'm a member of JUMP, and I have a church family. I'm well involved in the JUMP organization for a few years now. I retired and I looked for a job, and I found the Boys and Girls Club. So work part-time or as needed. A lot of times, a lot of hours, but it's okay. I acquired my 4 grandchildren. My daughter is at-risk youth, in and out of jail, different places and things. So it became necessary to get custody of my 4 grandchildren. It took 7 years to wrestle them out of the system. They came to me with diapers on. They were taken several times. And in the process, I took them to Boys and Girls Club. I'd come pick them up. At the door would be KBC, seeing who would come pick them up. According to them, violations, so forth and so on. They separated us. I'd go and get them. Separate us, go and get them. This happened several times. Finally got to the point where just ran into some obstacles in life and at work and things and couldn't handle both. I retired. It's been a process, but it's been good. But my daughter was, I think this was a year ago, she was a victim of a shooting. She was shot in the head. Her chances of living were none. The neurosurgeon met me in the hallway, tears in her eyes, saying, "I've never seen anything like this." She wasn't expected to live. So by the grace of God, she is recovering. But it changed our lives completely. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand where you're coming from, sir, about at risk. Both these organizations are very much needed. I don't know what's going on in the past and all the intricacies and all the things that have developed. That's not my concern. My concern are my children. This is a day-by-day situation. When it happened, the person who met me at the door was Dawn, and just stood there, cried, hugged. And she's been there ever since. My church family's been there equally ever since. What you're talking about is at-risk children at-risk adult or adults that do the crime. There, from what I understand, there are policies and regulations in place with the police department that you just can't have certain entities in those places. Well, the church is about forgiveness. That's where those people can go who've turned their lives around and are willing to help and doing a good job doing it. So it's both organizations. It's not one or the other. Yes, there needs to be conversation. There needs to be dialogue. There needs to be understanding on both sides, because there's, in the middle is me. In the middle is families like me, because when there's no communication, when there's arguments and when there's division, nothing takes place. I'm still in the process of trying to find help. The only viable help I could see in my future, and what would maybe be some help, is Stormont Vale in the trauma center. The trauma that exists is tremendous. I have one son who's in the system, 17. When this happened to his mother, he says, "Grandpa, I can go get guns." He was 15 at the time. Where are you going to get a gun? That's, unless you really, you can look at numbers all day. That tells you nothing about what's going on in people's homes. There was one son was with his mother at the time. He had gotten an argument with me, just something at school. So to escape, his mother was helping move someone. He went with her. He witnessed this. This is a kid. He was younger than the 15-year-old. And then there's, I have one, he's just turned 18. He's doing really, really well. He's progressed. He has a good heart. It just shines through. And I have a granddaughter. She's 15, all-world athlete, according to her. But she's on the president's list. So she's done great. I mean, just wonderful. But underneath, there's that underlying, there's that undertow. There's that subtle thing that I see. What's taking care of that is the Boys and Girls Club. That's where I had to take her. That's where I'm working. Mom is working. Grandma's working. We were trying to support a large family. At the time, it was those four, my own two sons, and my daughter. My daughter's my joy. I have one daughter. When she comes through the door, it's a Kool-Aid smile. Blows daddy away. That's not there anymore. What happens if I go home and this is what I'm faced with? I still see the smile. She's progressing. But in the process, I need to see progress from the place where I live, the place where I work, and the people that I know. And that's where I have to get support from. And if these things take place, what am I left with? What is the future of these children? This is real world stuff. This is not numbers. This is not a speech. This is a heart. This is people hurting. I'm representing the people that are hurt by the violence. So how do you address the violence? It takes action. The last time something went on, we promised to get together and have a march. Well, it's just a simple march, but it shows solidarity. It shows thought process. It shows that people are thinking about stuff. The last time something happened was 9/11, and for a minute, the world stopped and took note of what was going on. And that's all it took was conversation, something that unifies. If the violent crime doesn't unify, listen, I guarantee you by the numbers, you do the numbers, sooner or later, if it hasn't happened, violence is going to be at your doorstep. Then it's going to be reality check. Then it's not going to be folded hands and faces in the face. It's going to be your heart where mine is. That's when it'll make a difference. So I urge you, both organizations are very much needed before any decision is made. There needs to be some heartfelt conversation. You need to see her side. She needs to see your side. Each side needs to see a side. Don't let something like this happen to you and then you want to see a side. It's not necessary when all of you are well enabled to make good, conscientious, well thought out decisions and planning by conversing with one another. These kids, I know I work with these kids, I see them every day. I see someone I recognize, there's some issues at home. You can't solve all of those things, but at least the provision is there to start. And for the adults who change their lives and want to help, there needs to be room for them to help. That's what it's about. That's basically, there has to be room at the table for everyone who wants to pitch in and do some earnest work. That's all I have to say. I appreciate the time. Thank you. Some of I haven't seen in a while.
Sir?
Good to see you. Yes.
Before you leave the podium, I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
For so eloquently reminding us of what we need to do. And that's to work together to get to help the kids that need help, to prevent the ongoing, continued cycle of violence, because that's where it needs to be stopped. Others may not have the opportunity to intervene, but I appreciate the honesty that you gave your presentation with us today.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Kell, Councilwoman Hiller, then Councilwoman Valdivia.
I'm going to ask my colleague to politely remove the motion so we don't stop any ongoing situations that we're working towards right now with these families. But we figure out a way to have something where we can work towards including more organizations. Because I think if we yank this now, we're going to stop a lot of families that are getting help from continuing to get the help that they need. But, you know, by removing this from the budget, I think we should just keep it in the budget and then start working towards a unified goal on what this program should be and where it needs to go. Because I think we just yank any funding for this, we could hurt a lot of families in Topeka and counteract what the whole program is about.
May I, Mayor, respond to what he said?
Councilman Hiller's next. Councilman Hiller.
Okay. I don't mind deferring, but I can. Okay, what this does is points out a couple of things, I think. We are in budget right now, and so something for us to keep in mind is that right now, what we're talking about is a real live program that shows up on the budget as contracted services, and it's part of something, probably a much bigger line item. And if we feel that it's important to provide, in this case, the police department with the discretion to contract with partners in the community for certain needs, we want to be careful, even if we have some comments and concerns about how the grant-making process and monitoring process goes, not to take the money out. We're only in September, and we're talking about 2024. So I want to point that out in terms of making sure if we're committed to providing funding for contracting to help in these services, that we leave the money there. Another thing I'll point out was that what we just heard had about the process. We heard Councilwoman Ortiz and I can both remember because we were on council. That happened before. And so for a number of years, the council pulled all of what we called contracted services that were being contracted out by particular departments in under a contracted services block in the social services grant program to make sure that every year, even if they were services that the city felt were essential and contracting through departments, that they went through that same process of identifying need, identifying outcomes, talking about what their process was, what their success had been that prior year, and that there was an annual cycle. We've been talking about outcomes overall, and that was built into that cycle. About 2 years ago, a decision was made somewhere along the way to pull them back out and put them into departments, and look what happened. Procedurally then, it's not really a budget thing, but procedurally we might, I think we're already in the conversation about how to manage those side contracts and so on. Again, that's a management thing that can be a recommendation or a proviso to city manager, but doesn't necessarily need to cut the budget. So just wanted to point out those two pieces. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia.
Thank you. So to Councilwoman Hiller, what are you saying then?
Well, I'm saying you want to make sure you don't throw the proverbial baby out with the proverbial bathwater. If you want services, then cut the money means it's not available for contracting with whatever it is we really want. So it was a caution about suggesting to take the money out. The contracting happens between the department and the community. So some guidance management-wise on how to do that best, we heard some of it already from city manager, can resolve who gets the contract and what gets done with it.
I think I got that. Okay. So in reference to Councilman Kell, this is the deal. I find this really interesting. One little council person bringing this up and then come to the council meeting and it's all laid out. All the people come and speak to why it's worth saving, and we got to, again, I'm going from what I've been hearing in community, and that may be some hesitancy with speaking up. And I have the ability to speak up because I'm an elected official. At 61 years old, Representative Kell, I'm more of an and kind of person. What I see here is save, and the way that it's happening. But I also look at 2 years, and I'm interested to know if, and I understand, I wasn't part of what Ms. Dawn was saying, she was part of all these 2 years, and what Ms. Lindsay was, and all of that. I understand. I get it. I'm coming at this with not as much information as you all do, but I'm also coming at this with concerns that have been told to me by a number of organizations that work in community. So, did you have a chance to read what SAVE was actually about and what it was meant to be and how the DA signed on for it and then it went through a radical shift and change? Even if you didn't, let's just leave that as it is. I believe in youth, in helping youth. My husband helps youth every day as a volunteer and has done that since the late 80s. So set that aside as well. The whole thing about there are individuals, adults in this city that are perpetrating a number of the same crimes. What about that part of the program? I'm down to working this out so it can be an and approach rather than an either or. Because what we're getting right now is an either or, and was a disappointment and lack of belief in the system that a number of organizations went through for 2 years. Invested money, some of that was probably taxpayer money, this is definitely taxpayer money, and they see the problems continue to rise. The homicides continue to rise. So I'm all for an and approach if that's what you're talking about, with addressing the issues with these adult individuals that are committing crimes and the children. Because to me, if we don't do an and approach, I think in the end, we're really going to be wishing we may have done that.
I feel that this is almost a personal issue between you and I, and I feel like it was insinuated this is a setup, that these people came here, I'm arguing on their behalf, and I feel like, and then for you to sit there and say you're an elected official, you're the one with a voice, everyone in this community has a voice.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, you said you're the elected official, you're the one with the
No.
voice. Everyone in this town has a voice.
Councilman?
Call the question.
Yeah. Okay.
But I wasn't done, I had a lot more to speak on what was said there.
The question's been called.
The councilwoman gets to speak all she wants to speak and throw barbs at people every meeting, but when anyone wants to counteract what she says, there's an issue.
You're out of order. Okay. We'll get to it. Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
I think you have a motion to call the question, which is a non-debatable motion, so if there's a second, then you would need to vote on that.
Okay. Is there a second for call the question from Councilman Emerson? So we'll vote on that. Call the question.
Just to be clear, a yes will call the question, then we'll move to the vote on the question.
Correct.
Correct. However, under your rules, after you call the question, anyone who has not been allowed to speak still gets to speak one more time.
Okay, good.
That has not been allowed to speak.
Correct.
Good.
Okay.
That was my concern.
Okay. Everybody understand the vote? Councilman Ortiz, I see you shaking your head. The first vote, if you vote yes, means that we will call the question. If you vote no, then we will continue this discussion. Okay? If you'll call the roll, please.
Councilmembers Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmembers Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
No.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
and Duncan.
Yes.
All right, we have 9 yes. Councilmember Ortiz voting no, the motion carries.
Okay. 9 yes, call the question, and now we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Correct, and before the call is implemented under our rules, anyone who has not spoken has the opportunity to speak to the current motion on the floor, which is Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala's motion to remove the money from the budget and reduce revenue.
Is there any council member who has not spoken on this yet who wishes to speak before we call the roll? Okay?
Ms. Ortiz.
No. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to finding a solution for this, but I've also dealt with families that this service has saved them. I have a lady that I'm working with, she has 8 kids. They fight all day in school. They fight the teachers, cuss them out, SROs, all of that, because of the trauma that they witnessed from the adults. Because of some of the homicides, that the decisions and the choices that their parents make. I wish that we could get the juveniles that create crimes, I wish we could get their stats, but we can't hear of them because they're juveniles and they're protected. But there's a lot. There's a lot. And maybe we can, I don't know, I'll ask the city attorney if we can get, serve on the juvenile justice system for a while. You'd be surprised on what goes into these schools, the same schools that my grandson, your grandkids, your kids, his kids, or your godkids, are the kids that you sit there and help day by day, that come to the boxing, come to the basketball camps. They're there because they want to be there at those special camps that we hold to get them off the street, to mentor to them. But they're forced to be at home to live with that. I think Dawn does a great job. I like the SAFE program for the aspects of they have volunteers that go out that can relate to these kids that have been in trouble, that can talk to them, that can relate to them. And I've seen that firsthand. But it doesn't always hit home because it's a deep-rooted trauma, deep-rooted hurt. I think JUMP and some of these other organizations are wonderful organizations, but we all have to put our money where our mouth is, and we all have to play a part in this. And I'd be willing to sit down at the table. But we have to sit down and be realistic, though. We can't say it's this side or that side or this, it's all of us. That, and then look at the root of the problem, the mental health, the homeless, the drugs, the alcohol, and all of that. And so I will not vote to take this money out. I would like to find a solution for it if we feel like we need to do something with the adults, but I agree. I think we need to start with the kids because they're the ones that truly suffer. It's not the mother that goes on and leaves the kids. And being at DCF and watching all the kids that come through there and the trauma, again, that they face. Our crime rates are up, but we have to look at each and individual case. I remember there was a case, it's the Norwood killings, and those were juveniles. I went to several ministers and said, we need to do something about them. No, they weren't juveniles. They were between the ages of 18 and 23, and I was told, oh, they're adults. They should know better. If they knew better, they'd do better. So I see it on both sides. And I just don't want to take any funding away that can help our youth in other ways that they really, really need it. And I too would like a report. I too, maybe that's something that we did wrong, that we didn't ask for. But we can change that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Just checking again. This roll call vote.
Can I just,
Oh, I didn't see. How could I miss those alarm? Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you. Yeah, I just put up my hand at the last second. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously something where there has been miscommunication and distrust, and we need to address that. My trepidation at moving forward with this motion is that we will go ahead and stop some good work, that is being done. But there needs to be an opportunity to bring those stakeholders to the table and get back on the same page. Hearing the witness that we heard tonight, I can't in good conscience know that there are families out there that are getting help from this program, even if it's gone in a direction that isn't what was intentionally put forth by the community members. That being said, we do need to come back to this. We need to talk about this. We need to make sure that everybody is on the same page and clear about their expectations. And there's obviously a lot of passion about this. There's a lot of investment in it. And for that reason, I do hope that, I don't know if there's something that we can go ahead and stipulate with these funds, if we have any authority to do that as the governing body, to bring this forward in front of us, or have some sort of meeting down to that sort of more technical detail work, especially since we're a big picture group governing body. If there was a way that we could go ahead and have that be brought forth so that the community can figure this out together moving forward, I would really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
I have no idea how to do this, how to change a motion to that and that I'm kind of talking about, not take it out, but what can we do to balance both?
City Attorney.
The call to question has already been voted on. It's
Yeah.
already implemented. There's no changing the motion. It needs to be called as soon as everyone who has not spoken has spoken.
So what does that mean then?
That means that we will vote now on whether or not we will delete it from.
Correct. Someone else
Okay.
can make a subsequent motion to re-add it to the budget and re-add on the revenue side.
A vote no would mean it remains in the budget.
Correct.
All right? Does everybody understand that? Okay. So everyone has had an opportunity to speak, who wishes to speak, and we will call the roll, please.
Okay, Mayor Padilla,
No.
Councilmembers Hiller,
No.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
No.
Emerson,
No.
Kale,
no.
Nager,
No.
Dobler,
No.
Duncan,
No.
and Hofer.
No.
Okay, we have 9 no. The motion fails with Valdivia Akala voting yes.
Okay. Now, as I understand it, we're still under the appropriation ordinance consideration. So do we move forward now with Freddie and Adam? I would like to offer, though, real quickly, that I had talked to city manager earlier, and I think that suggestions to come together and refocus or reestablish establish an MOU as we move forward is a good idea. So, thank you for that, City Manager. Councilman Duncan. Oh,
Thank
my eyes don't go that way, so.
Thank you, Mayor. So obviously I voted because it was my motion, but what is going to happen now? So does that mean with that $75,000 in future, it's just going to go its way that it usually has, and we're killing then conversation for that and approach that we were talking about?
No, not at all.
Okay.
No.
We're good then. Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
If this is a $75,000 MOU contract, whatever it is, it comes before the council. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we'll move forward. Ready? Oh, wait, maybe we won't. Councilman Duncan.
Well, was there more presentation, or are you just taking our, okay.
That's right.
Good, okay. So a couple things. First of all, I do want to thank staff, as I'm sure most of us will tonight. You've done a lot of what we've asked. You've put up with a lot, but you've also given us a lot of information. I've appreciated all the conversations back and forth. I do want to say that the graphic you showed tonight that shows where the dollar goes, and the graphic that you showed last week that specifically lays out the different taxing entities are really great graphics. And I would recommend those get put out a little bit better to the public, like on the website and social media and all those other places, because they're simple, they get right to the point, and they actually show people where their money goes. So those are very good graphics. So thank you for those. I think they're very helpful. I said it last week as we did the R&R hearing, and I'm going to say it again tonight. I can support this budget as it is because I appreciate that it has a 1 mil reduction. I'm very happy, and I appreciate that the council is going to move forward and let us take a shot at the property tax relief program for seniors. Having said all that, I still think we have some money in reserves we could use. In 3+ now 4 years on this council, we have had excess funds at the end of every single year, including COVID times. I don't see any reason that that's not going to happen against next year. I just think it's going to happen because it has historically every year. So for that, I would like to move that we at least consider 1 more mil reduction in this year's budget before we pass it out. That's my motion, yes.
Second?
A motion and a second.
Second.
Did you catch that, Brenda?
I did. An additional mill levy. Who wants the second? At the same time. Okay.
Any discussion before? None? Councilwoman Hillard.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. I wasn't quite sure where to bring my comments in. Maybe I'll just make them here all together. I've been comfortable with, as I said last week, with the estimate that with where that budget is right now. At the same time, with Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala's very appropriate concern about one thing that she heard about, one of the options we could do, and there's probably not time to do it tonight, but would be to list areas that we think need attention in that budget as guidance for interim city manager Neinstead for the next one that's coming and so on, just to make sure we sort of own any observations or concerns or priorities that we have in this budget. It's just a thought. I mentioned I might bring a list tonight. I've worked on a list, but it just seemed like it was too much to bring forward. But I'll put that out on the table as something we could do. And with that in mind, what I was going to volunteer was that we could vote on the budget as it is and either mandate or challenge the staff to reduce it by even 3 million, which would be 2 mills. That was a number that Freddie had offered when he and I were working on this. Or I am comfortable with supporting, one of the reasons I liked it that way was because we have so many moving parts going right now, new staff, new programs that were proposed and I guess are on the table, and strategic planning as well, but the staff hasn't had time to pull it in and actually figure out exactly how they want to do it and how to assign those things and get all the pieces moving. So I got a little worried about cutting the mill levy or making some specific cuts right now versus challenging them to get it down another 3 million, but give them the option to work on it. So I'll just throw that out for conversation. I can go either way, because I think if we reduce it by a mill right now, it's going to force the city manager and the staff to make those line item cuts right away. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think to pass it, we have to.
Adam and I have been telepathically messaging each other about this. We believe we would need to make a corresponding line item cut, but Adam has a suggestion on where you could do that.
Okay.
So if you're wanting to reduce another mill, we still are cash funding our Dreams program next year. So it's just kind of a trade-off there. We could reduce by a mill and still GO bond that program, or we could continue cash funding that and leave the mill levy as is. There's always other options out there that we can work with, but that's the one just right at the tip of my.
An additional option potentially could be that you don't cut the line items, however, you do cut the revenue by a mill, but you state that or from tax levy, but you state that you're willing to pull it from reserves.
And I guess if I could
Yes.
continue, if I've got the floor on that still, again, I think we need to have exactly those kinds of discussions, but it was kind of sudden death to do it tonight. And so because for instance, we've had I think a fairly shared priority to reduce bonding and indebtedness. So if we just did that and staff flipped Dreams back into bonding, we didn't get anywhere with that idea. Yet otherwise, if we said it needed to be operating expenses, I think there are some places that could be done. I mean, I said last week, Freddie popped his eyes a little bit. He didn't remember, but when he said, I think we could still get $3 million out, I went, really? And went back and looked, and I can see some ways. There's some big ticket ways. Like if we, for instance, get the whole engineering staff hired as a team, and we've got $1 million to $1.5 million in contracting out that we could then bring in-house. Downtown parking is a $500,000 hit right now. Again, giving the staff the challenge and the chance to work on that so that it's not just instant seemed like a better idea. I've also been in conversations, I'll let the person I was talking to volunteer it himself, but I'm okay with further making a commitment as part of our resolution tonight to reserve $3 million from the reserve for debt alternative funding. Again, every $1 million that we don't bond saves us $600,000. And on just more of a note that the average person can understand, for every $100,000, we'd save 60. So those are just some thoughts to put on the table. A simple resolution could be then to adopt the budget as is, either direct or challenge the staff to get $3 million out of it, and also direct staff to set aside a debt alternative fund with $3 million from the reserve, with that challenge then to match it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor and then Councilman Duncan. Or you can flip-flop, whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I think I support the motion, certainly. Probably go further, but it's a good compromise, $2 million cut. I don't know that taking money from the reserve and putting it into a fund as part of this overall budget discussion is appropriate. But I think what would be appropriate is to come back with a resolution that says, for instance, at the end of the year, anything in the reserve that amounts to over 22.5% will go in a special fund that will be used to relieve debt. That way, as opposed to, and I think it'll probably exceed the 3 million if what we heard last week was any indication. That way, I mean, we've said 15% is the absolute bottom that we want to be. 20 is pretty good. We should be around there. 22.5 ought to give us enough breathing room without having so much money in the bank that comes from taxpayers. And again, a buck that was collected last year is worth about 96 cents now. And that just doesn't make sense. So I'll bring that resolution back. I'll ask the city attorney to draft that. Be happy to be supported by anybody else. 22.5% may not be the right number, but let's get this baby down where it ought to be. Thank you.
Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I mean, essentially using the methods, there's not my, no, it's not my intent to flip dreams back to bonding, because we did pay that cash, and we can keep it that way. And I think in both the methods outlined by the city attorney and the deputy mayor, going those routes gets us to where we need to go. It gives us some flexibility to make those decisions moving forward while being able to pass out a budget that reduces it another mill. I think, like you, always nice to go lower and lower, but I think 2 mills gets us at 3 mills in the last 2 years, which is pretty significant. And you don't hear me say nice things about some of the other tax entities all the time. So I will say both 501 and Shawnee County are looking at passing budgets, which will have some mill decrease. So I think that cumulative total is good for the community as a whole, as we've seen the valuations and other costs go up. And I think us adding to that as much as we can is helpful. So I will leave my amendment, I think, as is, unless it needs to be friendly altered to more better. We can come up with that language if we need to. So I'm not sure how you want to go with the amendment, but.
Could we get?
Can you
reread it?
Read.
The motion?
I think the original motion.
The motion was just to reduce the mill.
Reduce the mill by an addition, by 1 mill. Reduce the budget by 1 mill, an additional 1 mill.
An additional one?
Yes.
Yes, an additional 1 mill as to what's being proposed. So get it down to 36.
And is there a second?
So maybe a friendly, do we have to have a second before we do a friendly?
You've got a second with Duncan
Okay.
and Valdivia.
Right.
Maybe a friendly amendment to make that gap come from the reserves, whatever wording is necessary.
Whatever wording the attorney, that's where I was headed with that. Get the right wording that makes
Yeah.
both the staff budget happy and the attorney happy.
Yes, you could do it as a friendly amendment. The other option is if you want to go with the original motion, the last day to pass budgets is November 20th, so you could finish everything here and then direct staff to find the necessary cuts and expenses to make sure that our budget matches legally and pass it next week if you wanted to.
I'm tired of this. Let's do it tonight.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Let's go with the first route. It still gives them the flexibility to make those decisions. I have confidence in their ability to navigate where we're headed.
So without
after
the
hearing
friendly,
tonight.
right? Or with the friendly?
With the friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to make sure under cash basis that our revenue matches expenses.
Right.
Okay.
So where are we?
So with the friendly amendment, we can vote on it just
Correct.
straight through? Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
So if you will call the roll, please.
So yes, I accept the friendly amendment. Now, does someone want to read it back to us?
Please.
So that we know, so that we're all very clear as to what it says.
Okay. So the motion is to reduce the budget by an additional 1 mill and the friendly amendment is to cut revenue from ad valorem taxes and make up the difference from reserves.
Bingo.
Okay.
Does the second also have to accept the friendly?
Yes.
So that, can I ask a clarification question?
Who is the second on this?
Valdivia.
Valdivia, okay.
Okay. Oh, Wes, yes.
Clarifying question, that means that the budget is left whole without any directives or cuts?
That's my understanding.
The 1 mill less budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
1
You don't
mill
have to be
less
happy
from
that you
ad
can-
valorem taxes.
Yes. So yes to your answer.
If it's possible, I would like to have it definitely be included in the record that I would like to challenge the staff to reduce expenses by 3 million over the course of the year and report same so they can get credit for it. Doesn't have to be a vote if people aren't ready. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone done?
No, well, I'll just say, I appreciate that we got there. I don't know if this is going to pass or not, but thank you for wordsmithing it with us, everybody, and workshopping a little bit. I know it's not ideal for the two guys sitting right there who have worked so hard to craft this to the dollar. I also feel like they probably deep down secretly knew it was coming, whether they wanted to actually admit it or not, and that's okay. But I really am thankful for everything they've done and for taking these curveballs tonight that we've put at you, especially since this is another $1.4 million approximately, give or take, that'll have to be reduced. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, Mayor.
Appreciate it. Adam, you okay? He just sitting there like, okay, what's...
But it won't, right?
Okay. All right. Now, we're ready to take a vote.
We're voting on the councilman's amendment? Or-
No.
Oh,
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
yeah, okay, that's
The
what,
friendly- With the friendly amendment,
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page,
Yeah.
so.
to reduce it an additional 1 mil. Okay,
Are we ready?
we're ready.
All right. Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
She's entertained tonight.
She's struggling. She's struggling there. I can see it.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Mayor Padilla.
Yes.
All right, we have 10 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Further presentation, or? All right. So, correct me here, do we now need
No, to
a
approve as
motion to
amended.
accept
Yep,
the budget
As amended.
as amended.
as amended?
Mr. Mayor.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay. Got a motion by Councilwoman Nager, second by Councilman Kell. Okay, we'll take a vote now to approve the budget as amended. If you call the roll, please.
All right, and the mayor does not vote on this final one. All right. So council members
Start all over.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
I am going to vote yes, because Adam asked me earlier today, when I asked him, is there anything I should know about the budget? And he said to vote on it so he can breathe.
She's having way too much fun tonight.
council members Emerson,
Well, it almost makes me want to vote no, but I will vote yes.
Kell,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
I will vote yes. I've got a question about why the mayor does not vote on this.
Under state law, mayors do not vote on appropriation ordinances, but they have a veto right.
But this says we need 6 votes.
It should be 5 votes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
and Councilmember Hiller.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Freddie. And Adam.
Okay.
The next item we have on the agenda will probably take us into some conversation, and we're approaching 8 o'clock. So I would entertain a motion for a 10-minute break, recess.
So moved.
Okay. Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are recessed for 10 minutes.
I wasn't even desperate yet.
All opposed, say no, no.
Okay, we are reconvened from our recess, and we will move on to agenda item E, if the clerk will read.
E is discussion and possible action of proposed amendments to Article 3 of Chapter 945 of the Topeka Municipal Code and repealing original sections concerning unlawful camping.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, this is a report from continuing discussions we've had about the camping ordinance, and staff and the city attorney's office, several different departments have worked together to put the material that you are going to see tonight in answer to some of your questions. And at the same time, the city attorney will walk through the camping ordinance with you also.
Okay. Thank you.
You ready for me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Well, about 2 weeks ago, not about, 2 weeks ago, you guys were just presented with 4 different versions of camping ordinances. These were versions that had been proposed by individual members or ordinances that other parts of our nation have tried to implement. At that meeting, we took a very detailed list of questions of various map options. And your naive city attorney promised magic maps, and a lot of staff probably groaned and have hated them things over the last 2 weeks, but especially Bryson Risley and Travis Lathrop, who's now here at City Council today to help us go through some magic maps. So this is definitely not where he normally spends his Tuesday nights. And so tonight we are going to walk through several various maps and answers to various questions. We would ask that you hold all your questions until after we've walked through all of the different various maps. We practiced this afternoon. It was a little rough, but this topic can get a little confusing pretty quickly. And so this will allow you to present us and go through in a logical order the various options. And then we're happy to stand for questions, and Travis is happy to zoom in on any particular map and answer various questions as you have them after we've gone through them all. And again, I just want to give a huge shout out of thank you to the folks in GIS, planning, housing, IT, utilities, TPD, and the legal department who all went into making this a reality. So the first map that Travis is going to pull up on your screen, and this is an interactive map, so it has various layers that we are going to turn on and off to show you various items. So I'll give Travis a second to pull that up. So the first map we're going to show you is all the public property in the city of Topeka. So this map, and I'll have Travis go through it, but it includes your school districts, cities, counties, state, federal government. So basically all public land. It accounts for 656 properties and 5,725 acres. So Travis, you want to tell anything that you want to tell about that? That'd be great.
If you take a look at this map that's being presented right now, the two things that you want to take away are, number one, the Can you hear me okay? All right, yeah. So when we look at this map, two things you want to take away. Number one is the city boundary, which is the outline in pink, and then the polygons that are a lighter tone within the center of the map represent the actual publicly owned land.
Okay. The second map that we're going to turn on some layers on, and we can zoom in as we go through this as well, is just the city of Topeka property. The city of Topeka owns 267 properties within the city for a total of 1,265 acres. Thank you to Bryson for giving me all these facts and figures. Of those 264 properties, the county appraiser deems 174 of them to be vacant for 671 acres. That's relevant because, as we talked about the case law 2 weeks ago, if you ban camping in certain zones, there still needs to be public land available for camping unless we have enough alternative beds for everyone who would be otherwise homeless. Of those properties that the county appraiser deems vacant, not all of those are actually vacant. So Sylvia Davis, for example, has gone through several of them and shown what utility uses, so that number is actually lower. So over to Travis to explain what you're seeing.
All right. So right now the map represents two components. We've got the city-owned properties, which are the lighter tone. And then on top of that, we've got the purple categories of coverage, which again represents city-owned property that's vacant. So I'm going to turn off the vacant properties right now, and you can see that our map represents all of the city-owned properties in the pink color. I'm going to turn on the vacant component of that so you can see which of those city-owned properties are considered vacant land, meaning there's not any infrastructure there.
And as we go through the discussion, we can zoom in on various areas so that you can see what is still left as various proposals are introduced. So the third layer we're going to turn on, the mayor had asked for a location of known encampments. TPD and housing spent significant time over the last 2 months going out and visiting and geolocating all of the known encampments that we can find in the city. So those are all of the dots in red. There are 84 total encampments that we made contact with over the last 2 weeks. And so those are all encampments with individuals at them. So you can see that those are predominantly congregated along the Shunga Trail, and then the Kansas Bank is where the other two large encampments are. So next, we're going to add a layer that demonstrated what was requested by Councilman Dobler. It's also been requested to be introduced by Spencer Duncan and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, introduced as co-sponsors. But this would give a buffer zone of 500 feet on the trails, including the levee trails. And then originally in conversation 2 weeks ago, 30 feet around the sidewalks was mentioned. That was what it was built upon. And then when I asked for 50 feet, everyone cringed. So this is built on 30 feet for now so that it gets the same point across. So you'll see that this on the map, I'll let Travis explain it.
Yeah, so what we're looking at now on the map, they're kind of hard to see at this scale. I'll zoom in a couple areas to make them more noticeable. But we're looking for these orange polygons that pop up within the city. If you can look in our legend here, those orange areas reflect these properties that we're getting ready to talk about. I'll zoom in on a couple of them so you can get an idea of what they look like, but you can see they're kind of intermittent and spread out across the city. And what those polygons represent are they are city-owned parcels that are outside of the buffer range that we've spoken about prior, where this is the 30-foot buffer on sidewalks and 500-foot buffer on trails. So if we exclude city-owned properties outside of those two buffer zones, this is what we're left with on the map. So areas of orange, which means, what does that mean to us? That means those are areas that we're still allowing people to camp in, right? One more component I'll just go ahead and add to this map. Vacant versus occupied. So we look at the map now, it really didn't change much, but you can see here, this parcel of ground is split between city-owned, again, orange represents city-owned parcels where they're excluded from the buffer zones, occupied by a premises or hardware infrastructure currently. Purple represents city-owned properties that are vacant, that are also outside of that buffer zone as well.
And so if we turn on the number of encampments, you'll show that a 500-foot buffer zone from trails and levees captures 77 of the currently 84 encampments that we know of. If you look on the Kansas Bank, for example, that 500-foot from the levee encompasses the entirety of the Kansas Bank. And then as you go through and discuss this, staff can zoom in on those properties that are left, because I think it's very important for you to understand what public land is left that would be available for camping, because that's obviously where people would camp. We also, to test it out to see whether or not the 500 feet versus something like 250 made much of a difference, the next layer shows what it would be with a 250-foot buffer. You'll find that it makes little to no change at all. It still encompasses almost the entirety of the Kansas Bank. There becomes a little small sliver where we currently have some encampments that would still remain, but the majority of the Kansas Bank would still be covered with a 250-foot buffer around the levee.
So for this map, pay attention here. Again, the polygons aren't going to change much, but there are some movement. And again, this is going to reflect areas that are open and available for camping outside of the buffer zones. So again, we're looking at right now on the map, the 30-foot buffer with the 500 buffer on trails. I'm going to turn on available areas to camp at a 30-foot meter buffer on the sidewalks and a 250 feet meter buffer on the trails. Pay attention to the map. You won't see much change, and that kind of tells the story right there. 1 second. Turning it off, turning it on the new one. So again, you can kind of see those oranges and purples exist in the same area. So 500 versus 250 really doesn't make a big effect on the available area for people to camp in.
And so finally, before we open up to questions, just some guiding principles to keep in mind as you discuss and debate from a public policy perspective, what is the right fit for you, if any. Constitutionally, where we're at right now is if we do not have enough available beds, we do need to have some alternative location. The map does show that there is public land still available. I would suggest that you have zoom in, ask Sylvia, other people, what those particular locations are so that you have a good grasp of what that is. Some other alternatives could be to decrease your liability risk, for example, it could be allowing a permitting system to allow camping in other locations if you have shortages of beds. You could designate one particular parcel for camping. You could change it from criminal penalties to civil penalties. You could go a whole different route and go To example, the ordinance that Councilman Duncan suggested a couple weeks ago of just having a time limitation, you could decrease your buffers, et cetera. But we are here to answer questions. There's lots of staff from various departments here that can answer questions about enforcement or what particular properties are to allow you to make informed decisions.
Thank you. He caught me first. Councilman Emerson has been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to be clear, the purple, where's camping allowed under this thing? Is it the orange or the purple?
There's no designation on the colors right now on where camping is or is not available. What this map represents and what we're looking at now, orange versus purple, means these are city-owned parcels outside of those buffer exclusion zones. Orange represents that they're not occupied now. I'm sorry. Orange means that they are occupied by a city facility. Purple means there's no land there. If you look here on this map, I'll try to zoom in a little bit tighter to tell the story. You can see, I'm going to turn off the layer, so where that purple is, you can't really see through it. They're supposed to be transparent, but that purple is kind of hard to go through. Let me turn off that purple and you'll see exactly the story. One second. So I've turned off that purple, and you can see that underneath it is a lot of forest and field, right? So that means it's we don't have any hard structure there for the city.
And so under our, if we propose some of these exclusions, they would be allowed to camp in the purple.
Correct, because if we have a city facility and there's it's infrastructure, we're not going to allow someone to camp inside the Public Works building, for example. So we made the distinction based off what is vacant.
Sure. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Councilman Cow.
I didn't see it, but can we get a link for this? Because I love the stuff you can do on Esri. I love what you guys were able to do with that.
After we answer all the questions and see if we need to build more maps, we'll figure out how to get you access.
Okay, and then the other thing is, I would want to sit there and say maybe almost we need to find some type of marker also to be able to mark these out if we do go with where they are, the areas they are allowed to. So this way, it's a marked designated area. They know that, you know, past this line is no go, and this bubble is go. But after everyone speaks, I would like to add an amendment to this.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so the purple is where there's nothing there. And that's where camping might be, or whatever we come down to the bottom line. So, because I'm not good with maps, exactly where is that?
One second. I'm just going to change the space map, and we'll get some points of reference on there for you.
That was.
That's Frito-Lay.
Yeah, Kansas Turnpike, 75 north to the west there.
Yeah, and I think Director Davis is up to help provide additional clarification, but staff is not recommending that those are the best locations to camp. We're simply saying that is the public land that would not be included in the buffer zone under which camping would not be prohibited.
Councilwoman.
And then can you show the other ones, enlarge the other purples? I missed it, sorry. So,
We've got that area down south that we were just looking at. There's some more ancillary spots south of the city as well. I'm going to go to the northern part right now.
okay, got it. And then, where is this?
So this is in North Topeka, just west of Topeka Boulevard. So Topeka Boulevard is going to be this main thoroughfare going north and south.
Yeah,
So that's
okay.
the major other large pocket. The other smaller ones, they're kind of spread out and kind of hard to find unless you really drill down and look in the map, but they are there.
Okay, okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Duncan.
First of all, thank you for this. This is pretty fascinating, not just as it relates to this issue, but it shows us a lot of just the property we have in general, which is pretty fascinating to see where it's all at and where all these parcels all across the city. Two questions at the moment. The first is, and there's no wrong answer here, you went down to 250 feet. Did you do anything below that, like 100 or 150 to see if that?
We did not go below
and
that
that's
at
fine.
this
I just-
point.
okay.
We can do that as well if that's.
No, yeah, I was just curious. And then, so assuming that, so let's say this became the map, there's still nothing that precludes us from deciding okay, we've decided there's 2 or 3 other areas that even though they're not in this map, nobody would care if people use them. We think they'd be fine spaces. We could then exempt them from our own map at some point or have that authority without screwing up the whole system, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of an ordinance is it can always be amended. So if you wanted to make a separate zone that's designated as a camping zone, that would absolutely be something that you could do as a governing body.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Keller, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not a map question at this point, but do we have a number? I thought that you had advised us not too long ago that there'd been some reinterpretations of the Boise case and that compelling need to be able to prove that we had beds was not as compelling as we thought it was at first. My question is, how many beds are we short?
Carrie, do you have any idea? Come on up.
Because there's a huge wait list. Well, it depends on how you define that. That's what I'm asking, because I don't know how they measure that either.
And I guess as clarification, it is still important, yes. You do still have to show that you either have enough beds or that you have land for camping. But the focus is different.
Yes, so I could not give you a number tonight of how many beds we are short if we put some of these ordinances in place. I can tell you that we have about 1,200 names that are on the EAS wait list that are waiting for funding, either first month's rent deposit or homeless prevention. And that number for that piece of it is about 500 individuals. And then there's about 600 individuals that are on the wait list for the voucher type programs, which would be income-based, which would be a little bit different, but could still be individuals that are unsheltered.
And sorry, Carrie, to ask you a question real quick. Are any of the encampments that you talked to on the wait list for those programs?
Yes, quite a few are.
I guess I don't know how that interpretation occurs. I mean, we don't have that many people in our homeless count.
We have, this year our homeless count was 412. That was the last Wednesday of January. Our estimates are, we have about 500, just the warmer weather, and we know that our homeless numbers have increased. I believe it was 157 in January that was considered unsheltered, but then the remainder of those 412, they're still homeless, they're just at a shelter or in some sort of maybe transitional housing.
Okay, so the 157 would be the magic number, if you will.
For those that are camping?
Yes.
Yes, in January, our estimate is that we have probably about 200 individuals currently.
Okay.
Councilman Duncan and then Councilman Kell.
I was just going to say to that question, my understanding has been, and there's definitions of what you can count as a bed, right? So
Correct.
when you talk to other churches or who are also providing, can you include those in your count? But I mean, I think if you look at what the rescue mission could provide, and then some of those we know about, it's maybe a couple hundred beds, give or take. So if our count is that 412, I mean, I think it's safe to assume it's 200 plus. From the legal standpoint, I think that's what they would look at. So we're probably short 215 beds or 200 plus beds.
Well, I just, if I may, I wasn't sure how hard we'd crunch that number in that if, for instance, Vallejo has added some crisis beds, and if those are available, if we always have some available, then if people decline to go, that's one thing. But if we have beds available in a detox entity, facility, whatever it is, or a mental health facility, and at any given time, we can demonstrate that we have the beds and we offer somebody a chance to go. If they don't want to go, then I guess I'm looking at where that line is, because we've worked on capacity and our organizations have worked hard at that too.
I don't know that legally there is a good line yet. You have some jurisdictions that have been very strict and said, a bed at a rescue mission that is a religious organization doesn't count as a bed. I mean, that's the Ninth Circuit. It's only non-denominational beds that count. You have other jurisdictions that do count those, and churches and other beds. So where the 10th Circuit is, I don't think there's been a case on it yet, so it would just be up for discussion.
Councilman Kell and then Councilwoman Valdivia.
This goes more to what my proposed amendment was going to be, because it doesn't really look at all I see is unlawful camping. I don't see really anything that defines what unlawful camping is. And this is coming from a guy that has made several trips this summer, slept at a Walmart parking lot, which in those areas were legal, slept at Cracker Barrel, which they encourage in my RV. And so then also one of the fastest growing things right now is camping in RV parks where someone can set up a tent and all that. So I want to make sure we're looking at recreational camping and not outlawing recreational camping, because I'm thinking about the tourists that come in, but I'm also thinking about groups like Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, 4-H that have camp out nights. And I don't want to restrict that or restrict a company wanting to come in and put something next to I-70, but if it's too close to a trail, it restricts what they do, or even restricts an RV park because we're being too vague in what unlawful camping is, because there is no definition that I'm seeing here or through any of this stuff of what unlawful camping that technically is.
So Councilman, camping is defined in our current city code. It is in section 9.45.350, and camp means to use property for living accommodation purposes such as sleeping activities or making preparations to sleep, including the laying down of bedding for the purpose of sleeping, or storing personal property, including but not limited to clothing, sleeping bags, bedrolls, blankets, sheets, luggage, backpacks, kitchen utensils, cookware, or other similar material, or making any fire, regularly cooked meals, using any tents, or living in a parked vehicle. These activities constitute camping when it reasonably appears in the light of the circumstances that a person is using such property as a living accommodation.
I'm just concerned about our recreational aspect of things, and then like our truck drivers. If our truck drivers just drop and go, that's a lot of possible money that could be lost in the fuel that they spend here and things like that. So I think we need to maybe look at this a little bit more, or have an amendment that throws in recreational and truck drivers, because like I said, I don't want to prohibit any service organization or children's organization that go out and camp. And I don't want to hinder any improvement, like a business that wants to come in, because like I said, RV and campsite grounds are becoming a big thing now, where it's just not like the KOA, where it's just here, throw it up. They're putting in swimming pools, they're putting in all these different activities to go along with it. And I've been to several cities across the US and driven, 5,000 miles this summer across the Midwest, and I've seen them pop up all over the place. So I want to make sure we're not restricting anything that could bring in business, bring in tourists, and inhibit our organizations that's part of, that's part of Boy Scouts, that's part of Girl Scouts, that's part of 4-H, is having your campouts, having your things like that. And to me, it's almost a little too vague, or a little where we're not including things that would inhibit recreational camping.
Councilwoman DiBiacola.
Thank you, Mayor. City Attorney, currently, are you seeing either in our circuit and/or across the country an increase in cases where cities are being sued? An increase?
I don't know that I could answer that off the top of my head. You saw a big jump after Boise. You'll see a leveling out until the Supreme Court decides what they're doing in Grants Pass. Then you'll either see a drop or you'll see an increase. But
Right.
cases tend to settle out when there's a case pending at the Supreme Court.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I have seen more and more articles about especially neighborhoods where, and I can only use the example of what's happened in District 2, where there's been such an overflow, where it's coming into neighborhoods, all of that, where there has been that protest, that pushback about public health and safety, and what, unchecked encampments are a public health and safety, crisis. And I just want to bring this up in a nutshell. This evening, just received an email that I've sent out to the governing body, forwarded to city manager, Director Copley, et cetera, about at the trails at 17th the Shunga Trail at around 17th and Adams, where we're having a mural for children that's being put up to be water protectors and encourage that. There was defecation, there was urination that happened on the trail that was put up against the wall. There was all kinds of junk and old clothing and everything that was tipped over onto, that was covering part of the mural. And this seems to me like it was very blatant, because there had been several weeks now where that mural had been worked undisturbed. So now there is the concern that of the defecation and the urination, with artists being concerned as well as their safety. So I just wonder about these cases that for a long time you had seen where whatever legal entity was going forward with cases that were representing the homeless, but the real pushback that is occurring now, again, because of the public health and safety crisis. And we definitely have that going on in this city. So I understand your hesitancy and that you need to advise us in that capacity, but I also understand that this problem is growing increasingly worse and more aggressive in nature.
And I guess if I could just add a point of clarification, to your point, I think you're seeing different kinds of cases. It's not an increase or decrease of litigation, it's which side is being litigated, I guess. So you are seeing different kinds of cases, like ADA cases filed by business owners against cities for blocking sidewalks. You're seeing public nuisance cases, whether or not those will go forward or not, who knows, but it's changing the type of litigation. So it's probably consistent number, but different size.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hofer, I'm sorry. Deputy Mayor, okay.
I got a question about the map. All of these that are right here, like on the Shunga Trail, that is considered public or private land right now?
Let's check real quick.
Yes, he does.
He has the click.
Thank you. I'm having trouble seeing without my glasses here.
Well, see, they name it, they say public property, and then they say city.
Thank you.
I'm not
I'm about to turn on all the publicly owned land in Topeka for the map.
Okay.
No, thank you. So as you can see, that is not city-owned property on the Shunga Trail right there,
Okay.
with the exception from where the purple areas are.
So
It may be
the
county.
500 feet or the 250 would take this area out.
Let's turn those buffers on real quick and take a look. I'm going to turn on the buffers. This is again a 500-foot trail buffer and a 30-foot sidewalk buffer. I'm getting ready to turn those on now. So yeah, all of that area that just got covered with that blue area is the buffer zone, because that's 250 foot off that trail.
And the ordinance as drafted applies to both public and private property. So it bans camping on private property as well within these buffer zones.
Okay, unless somebody came in, they bought a piece of this property, and they decided they wanted to put in an RV park, like they did down at Carnahan. Then that would be private, it would have to go through zoning. But once it went through zoning and it was...
If it was a commercially licensed, let me think about that, but I believe that would override the buffer zone ordinance, because it wouldn't be somebody living there for living accommodations, it would be a licensed park.
That's right.
Okay.
But I will think about it.
That's what I'm trying to figure out in my head. Then the other part was up off of Highway 75 and I believe Silver Lake Road. So the northwest part of the city. There was no one there, but it looked like it was city property. I wasn't quite sure what that was. No, further west.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Keep going. You're getting close there. That one. So how does that fall in? Because it's...
Is Sunflower Soccer ours? Who is Sunflower Soccer? Sorry, I don't know my soccer.
There we go. So according to Shawnee County, it says it is owned by the city of Topeka. That's why it's popping up on there like this, so.
It is occupied.
It's not purple, so it's not occupied, or it is occupied, it's not vacant.
I guess under our current camping ordinance, technically that would be allowed now. So it's probably an area that's already problematic.
Deputy Mayor and then Councilman Kell.
Thank you.
City Attorney, the county just passed a resolution that banned camping on all county property. Is that correct?
Correct.
How many beds are they providing?
So the county counselor is relying on it being a civil-only penalty. We'll find out whether or not the Supreme Court decides that's allowed or not. So it's not a criminal penalty. What it would do is assess a civil fine that then would go and be put on collections on their account if they did not pay it. It is not a criminal enforcement. How practical it is, I don't know.
Interesting.
Leave
Thank
that
you.
to them.
Councilman Kell.
All right. I'd like to propose an amendment here that would add commercial recreational property with a yearly permit. So if it does become a nuisance property, we can always revoke the permit. And then also like 24 or 40-hour permits for organizations so they can recreational, like a Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, 4-H, that they could have a camp out if they wanted to, with, and then they could file for a permit. And then anything they might consider an RV park style thing that they, I just want it on the books, because I just don't want someone that thinks, oh, Topeka would be a great place for one of these, look at the ordinance and say, well, I can't do that there. So I think
that would need to be probably I would need to wordsmith that momentarily. If you do a permitting system, you are going to have to be careful under equal protection clause, not discriminating against people. If you allow it for 2 days, what is your true public purpose in not allowing it for someone that is just passing through town for 2 days but is homeless? If it's a time limitation, you're discriminating based off time rather than purpose. So I would be cautious in how much you distinguish between different types of activities to minimize your risk. But I can try to wordsmith an amendment.
I just want to, like I said, on like the children's organizations, I just want to X that out 100%. Truck drivers, I think if the property owner is allowing them, like Walmart does, there's an issue. And then, RV camping parks, I just don't want it to be where someone just looks at it, thinks, oh, that'd be a great place, and then look at our ordinance and say, well, that won't happen there, and just move on. I would like to see something where we're not making it too interpretative. So whoever the officer is, or officer in charge, or whoever's dealing with the situation says, well, this says this, and this is what it meant. I want it to be where we're being flexible in some ways, where we're not just outlawing it 100% all throughout the city, when we have things that are like I said, when you have, I don't know how many times as a 4-H'er I went out camping, as a Boy Scout, I went out camping, and it just seems like if we're making it difficult for them to, do it in a safe place, because, sometimes it may just be in someone's backyard, or, with permit from the city on a city property, where at least they can be watched and all that, rather than going out somewhere where that may be unsafe, out in the country or something like that, where they're not familiar with that area. So I'm just looking at something that works with those children's organizations and works with our RV parks and truck drivers.
Councilman Duncan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I want to talk about the private property part of this for a minute, so I wrap my head around it. Right now, if we get a complaint that someone's on private property, we show up, we say, do you have permission to be here? If the answer is no, then you got to go, you're trespassing. If the answer is yes, it's, well, we need some verification from the property owner that you're allowed to be here, correct? Okay. If the answer to that is no, we remove them. If the answer to that is yes, we currently say, fine, you have permission, but you still got to follow all the laws. Pick up your trash, don't, all that good stuff.
Well,
This-
you wouldn't have to pick up your trash on your own private property.
Well, unless it gets to the point where it's become a public
Code, yes.
nuisance. I mean, to that point. But I mean, in theory, you can't just do certain things, okay. Under this ordinance, that would change, correct?
Correct. If you, for example, owned private property along the Shunga Trail inside that buffer zone, you could not authorize Councilman Duncan to camp there
What
momentarily.
about you personally?
You would not be allowed to camp there personally.
All right, I'll be honest, that's the piece of this I'm struggling with a little bit. Because I guess, just from my perspective, I think that 95% of the people who own these properties are going to tell us, I don't want that person there. I do think the hiccup that we struggle with, obviously, is the people we can't find who owns these properties, who then become the problem, because then we're stuck not being able to verify whether they had permission to be there, and we're dealing with this person on their property. I don't know if there's a way to add that says if you can't produce said permission within 24 hours, 48, whatever that time is. I don't know. That's why, I guess that's why we're having this conversation tonight. That would solve that. Great. Can you be here? Yes. Great. If you can't give us something in writing in 24 hours, we're going to consider you trespassing. I don't know, because I guess the piece of this I do have, understanding that that's a very real problem and wanting to address it. Man, I do struggle with telling folks you can't even camp for a weekend on your own parcel of land. That one I got to figure out, wrap my head around. So just want to put that out there. Thank you.
What if we amend this ordinance to basically include the ability for you to camp on your own personal property? If you are the owner of record, you can camp on your own property. I mean, doesn't seem like rocket science to me.
Yes, you can amend ordinances to do whatever
Yeah.
you would like them to do. Owner of record. I think to Councilman Duncan's point, I think you hearken back to the conversation 2 weeks ago between Councilman Valdivia, or no, Ortiz and one of you, about whether or not, in the original ordinance, it was introduced in 2018, that you had to show affirmative proof you'd been allowed to camp.
I mean, part of the effort here is let's get something so simple that we're not asking for, we're going to come back in 24 hours. When does that start? People move down the block, then they come back, whatever. Produce, surely you can figure out who owns the property. You can go to the county website and figure that out in about 5 minutes. If they have an ID that shows that they're owner of record, great, you move on. Let's keep this measurable, simple, and as straightforward as possible. And if these things creep up, if we got a truck driver that, I'm not sure I wrap my arms around that, but if it's starting to prohibit some things, we can always come back and amend the ordinance. But if we spend another 2 months trying to work out every little detail that might happen, we'll never get this done. Thank you.
I do think there is a very simple amendment that could be done to take the RV parks and that out of the equation, and that's simply at the beginning saying it's unlawful and public nuisance for any person to camp in the following locations unless otherwise allowed by city code.
I like
And then
that.
you're done.
Councilwoman Ortiz, I saw you waving at me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deputy Mayor, I want to bring to you an issue that I had that was actually in my district, where a gentleman brought property on Fremont. I don't know if Councilman Emerson remembers this. He brought property and then he pitched a tent. And they said there was nothing we can do about it. And he was there during the winter months, lighting fires, but it was his property. And we had a heck of a time getting him off of that property and getting him somewhere. I mean, it was snowing, raining, he's still out there. We tried to remove him forever and ever, so that was the issue. The gentleman that I was talking about, I'll call him Mr. M. He has now moved everything to District 2. He took all of his belongings and he went to District 2, and I've already told code where he's at. And that's what he's gonna continue to do. I would like to see us put in somewhere in there about these repeat offenders. I don't want to prolong this, but I have a lot of a lot of tents popping up on people's property. My neighbor has half the block, and she's had several people that have lived over there. And I went and talked to her about it. And she said, oh, they're not bothering anybody, but they are. They're watching me come and go. They're watching our neighbors. You know, I've caught them stealing my water. They'll pop a tent and they'll stay there as long as they can. There's nothing I can do because that's not my property. And she's not going to sign a ticket and ask them to move, so they're welcome there. So I just want to make sure that that doesn't happen in any district, because as soon as we start moving them, they've got to go somewhere. They're going to go somewhere. And I want to make sure that if we can address it this time around, that we are able to do that. So Amanda, I don't know, does this allow them to buy property in the city and throw up a tent?
Well, it would depend on whether or not you chose to adopt the amendment suggested by Councilman Dobler to allow the owner of record to camp. If the owner of record would be allowed to camp, then yes, they would be able to buy a property and camp.
And I just want to say there's a lot of people that they feel sorry for these people because they have nowhere to go. And that's how I obtained Mr. M in our neighborhood that's been there for at least 3 years, because he had nowhere to go with all of his junk. And it's taken a lot of manpower to move him, and now he's moved to District 2.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that again. This ordinance isn't going to answer every issue. There's, you know, if we can take care of 80% of the issues that are out there, that gets us ahead. I don't know if there's, I just said I don't want anything with time limits on it. Now, well, but it's worth discussing. If you can camp on your own property, can we set a time limit?
I think that there's a rational public purpose behind it, and that, yes, that could be legally supported. We do zoning, we require you to have certain building structures. We have a lot of those kind of rules. It seems like a similar thing, that you can camp at a non-permanent structure for so long before you have to build a structure that meets a code requirement.
Seems reasonable. So maybe that amendment would be you can camp on your own property not to exceed 3 days or something like that. Well, I don't know what's reasonable. I guess I'd ask for that. And then I think the councilwoman's other question was about repeat offenders. We did have someone that emailed, maybe all of us, at least a couple of us, suggesting maybe a tiered approach, which I thought was a great idea. He's going to speak, Nick's going to speak in a couple of minutes, and I'll let him outline that since it was his idea. So I think there may be some options there. Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Valdivia. Okay. Councilman Kell and Councilman Emerson. And then to aid the body in this discussion, and as you move forward, we do have people signed up to speak to this. I'd like to hear that public comment before we move any further on it. So, Cal?
It's been brought up online, and it's something I was thinking about also. The people that have been affected the most about this, for the most part, has been District 2, District 5. And it seems like by the map, the only places that are going to be allowed, possibly by this ordinance, is District 2, District 5. So are we really fixing any problem with what we're doing in those districts where we're having the issues of over and over and over, the crime, the destruction of property, the trash everywhere? So we need to look at certain things also, you know, maybe over time, if this does pass, that shows we're taking something to, you know, these don't just turn into small little landfills, that they don't As Councilwoman Valdivia pointed out earlier, where defecation and urination's happening all over the place. Because this has been the ongoing issue throughout 5 with the Travelers Inn and around the railroad tracks. And then I know the councilwoman's mentioned the river several times in her district and several other spots. But it's been an ongoing, I think those are the 2 hardest hit areas district-wise. But it seems like that's where we're gonna maybe plant the places where they are allowed to camp. So it's, I know probably some of the spots in the 5 those are probably gonna be a lot of phone calls I'm gonna be taking. And I know the councilwoman maybe the same thing about why are we allowing this in 2 and 5 when this has been the issue in 2 and 5.
Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and I guess my question is similar to what Councilwoman Ortiz brought up, of just displacing people. For instance, in District 4, right now, there's no dots in District 4, but I don't know, I wonder if your 500 feet buffer from sidewalks took into account that we have half of the places in Old Highland Park don't have any sidewalks. So how is that now, a lot of that area become, people can camp there, I guess?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'll have to follow up with you on that.
Yeah, because for instance, on California Street, there's sidewalks. There's the next street over is Colorado, there's sidewalks in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. None of those streets have sidewalks until you get to Illinois again, or Indiana. And so I guess, and the same is true with a lot of places in District 2 and District 3. They don't have sidewalks, so we may be taking these people from the trail and just putting them in the neighborhoods is my fear here.
It would depend on whether or not there's public land in those areas next to sidewalk, areas that have no sidewalks. Dan, I know I hate calling you up because I don't know if you'll still talk to me.
Right, but isn't
I mean,
it?
it's right of way, right? That's just right of way. So the property, traditionally, everybody still privately owns that property up to the street. There's no public sidewalk, so it would all be right of way.
Yeah, there wouldn't be, unless, it would just be easement, so unless we owned it outright and didn't have just an easement. So I can't tell based off the map if we have any areas of that.
So I guess my question then, so is it the same as having sidewalks then? And if it is, I'm good with that.
So if we only have an easement, then we only have easement for certain things, such as in my front yard, I only have an easement for my utilities. So you can't allow camping on my utility easement. That's not why I've granted you the right to my property.
Right.
But if we own the right of way and it's just city-owned right of way and not an easement, then that would be public land. I don't have sidewalks in my front yard. That's why I use my own example. So I'm one of those areas on 17th Street with no sidewalks, and the city of Topeka only owns an easement on my property.
So is camping allowed then in your?
No, because I own the land. I've just granted the city of Topeka an easement for the utilities. And an easement is restricted to what I have granted you the right to use my property for.
Okay.
Trying to move.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilman Kell, and I will say 3 Councilwoman Ortiz's area is getting hit pretty hard too, but historically with your hotels and all of that. So yes, there is that concern. I think the other concern is, and I understand what Councilman Dobler is saying, we can't solve everything, even if we get 80 to 90%, maybe even 99.9%, which I understand probably won't happen. But then I don't know if this is going to be the time for it, but we also have to have that, we really have to have the dialogue so that the public can understand how this will roll out as far as with enforcement and everybody stretched real thin on the, with TPD. And I mean, the public needs to be reassured and to know what the plan actually is. This is a wonderful and powerful first step. But we need to know how this is going to go down, because I have the concern that in some places there's going to be that shifting. And so where are they going to go? Where are they going to go? And how are we prepared for that? And I also think with districts 2 and 5 being where you see where camping will still be allowed, maybe not tonight, but, you know, I would really like to drill into that a little bit more. I understand if the juice is there with the governing body to vote on this tonight, but I would like to see a little bit more up close and maybe going and meeting with Travis on a map, because this moves in and out, and it's hard for me to, you know, to tell what is what exactly. So, thank you, Mayor.
Like I said, I'd like to move and give the public an opportunity to speak on this subject, if I may. Mr. Nick Zaitis. And it,
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. I'm a longtime Topeka downtown business owner since 2005, and I am a resident of downtown Topeka since 2015. And Councilman Kale, I'm the immediate past president of the Jayhawk Council of the Boy Scouts of America, so I'd be happy to stand for questions about scout camping if that helps you. I'd like to primarily start by speaking from my own experience, and I live in District 1. Councilwoman Heller is my councilwoman. We have seen a remarkable increase in both the quantity of people hanging around and camping in our neighborhood. And we've also seen, in addition to quantity, we've seen behavior deteriorate rapidly. Our grandchildren are now afraid to go to the Evergy Plaza and play in the fountains. Our 6-year-old granddaughter, the last time I took her there, grabbed my hand and said, "Grandpa, last time we went with Grandma, a woman was bathing herself, her private parts in the fountain. And when Grandma asked her to stop, she came over and yelled at us, and we had to leave. And Grandpa, do you think this time is going to be like that again?" So if you're thinking it's just the camps in 2nd and 5th District, you are deeply mistaken in your impressions. We are now very guarded about what we do in our own neighborhood. We are very guarded about what we do on the trails. Almost every day, there are campers at Evergy Plaza, in downtown, on the streets, doorways, and in the alleys. We often, as we can, report them to TPD, and they are usually very good at responding. We're sometimes disappointed that people are not cited. They are wellness checked, and we are not really excited about people being wellness checked. We want them cited and moved on. Many days, we pick up trash that is strewn over the downtown area that's left by people digging through the trash or their alcoholic beverage containers. So you don't see it because we're there at 6:30 or 7 every morning picking that stuff up. Most days, downtown merchants like us pick up trash and human waste in the alleyways. Often, our dumpsters are broken into by bending quarter-inch steel bars so that they can get at the contents. So these are not kind and gentle people that are doing this. Several times, we actually found people sleeping in the dumpsters, which is unbelievably dangerous, especially the recycle bins. Often, we encounter people who are acting in very disturbing ways. Frequently, we see people who are out of control, hallucinating. Oh, I'm going to run out of time.
You're going, go ahead. No, keep going.
We see them carrying substantial amounts of supplies. We've seen them brandishing weapons, which is part of their need and the lifestyle that they're living. Many appear to be in a state of intoxication in drugs and alcohol. That's the issue I dealt with immediately before coming to this meeting, was a gentleman sitting in front of our business, hallucinating and drinking his favorite alcoholic beverage. We've seen mentally ill people. Stephanie Miller, who recently was accused of attempted murder, is a regular visitor to downtown, and we know her well. The vast majority of the people, though, appear to be able-bodied men And we see a lot of visitors to downtown, especially parents acting in very guarded ways while they're there. Look, this is not about persecuting poor people or abusing people that we don't agree with or who live a different lifestyle.
Nick, would you like more time?
May I please, sir?
How much time would you like, sir?
May I have another 2 minutes, please?
Okay, moved, seconded, everyone in favor? Aye. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Mayor. This is really about bad behavior. This is about misdemeanor crimes. It's not about where people live. And look, any civil society has to require people to behave. I camp downtown in my own residence, but I'm not free to do whatever the heck I want. I'm not free to park my vehicle when and where I want. If I misuse that privilege, there are consequences. And camping activities, or whatever you want to call it, also needs to be a regulated activity within the city of Topeka. I understand we can't limit it everywhere, maybe for some constitutional reasons that Mrs. Stanley could explain. I'd also like to propose that real consequences matter. And I'm the one who sent the email that Mr. Dobler referred to. I sent it to him and the co-sponsors of the bill. I wasn't sure it's appropriate to send it to everybody. I would suggest that, if it's appropriate for me to suggest, the municipal code 945400 be amended to require minimum penalties. On a second offense, $100 and/or 5 days of imprisonment. On a third offense, $250 fine minimum and/or 15 days imprisonment. And on a on a fourth or consecutive condition, at least $450 in fine and up to 25 days minimum imprisonment. Look, consequences matter in this. And right now, there are no consequences on this community. And you all are spending a ton of time accommodating their needs. We have needs too. This is our city too. The 14th Amendment that equally protects everyone applies to me and my family too. I appreciate your time, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. During this portion of public comment, we don't do a back and forth question answering, but certainly if you remain here in the hall at the end of the
I'd be happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Meet people. Okay, thank you. Next person I have is Chelsea Houston.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Chelsea Houston, and I am the co-owner of Axe and Ale downtown off of 6th and Kansas. I am a transplant to Topeka. I've lived here for 8 years now. When I initially moved here, I had no interest in staying. Throughout the last several years, I have just fallen in love with the community. That love has grown just from my personal want to get to know the community to now I own a business here and I want to help the community grow. And how do we get people to move to Topeka? That's kind of my biggest thing. How do we get people to want to not only live here, visit here, just to love it like I do? I recently joined the Clean and Safe Task Force that DTI has put together. I think it's a step in the right direction. And I think that that's one way that we can help make Topeka a better community. The amount of foot traffic of homeless individuals through the alley behind my building has rapidly increased over the past few months. Either they're using it to set up camp throughout the day, the night, it really doesn't matter what time of day it is. They're either laying in the alley or they're just using it as a path to go to Evergy Plaza. As a female, I feel unsafe exiting my building alone. I have been threatened personally multiple times, whether it is in the facility, outside of the facility, it doesn't matter. And that's either just verbal threats or with weapons. I have been threatened. I no longer enter the alley after dark due to this. I don't like exiting the building even from the front due to the interactions that I have had. I have had to call TPD almost weekly just to have them come and help me handle a situation that I have been put in due to individuals that are passing through or camping out in the alley. As a business owner, this is incredibly concerning for the safety of both my employees and my patrons. I have entrances to both the front and the back of the building. I leave the back door locked unless there are more than one person working. I do not allow my staff to have the back door unlocked at this point because of the number of individuals that are hanging out in the alley. As a community member and a downtown business owner, I appreciate the city discussing moving forward with this measure. I look forward to seeing how this can positively affect the community. I really, truly think that this will help. And I think that it will not only increase the safety throughout the community, but it will also help make the city more welcoming to anyone that's coming in and visiting. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Ashley Gilliflin.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to make this brief. Ashley Gilfillan with Downtown Topeka Incorporated. I wanted to come and thank you all for the recent measures you've taken. I do see an urgency that is heard around the community, and the reaction times that we're seeing from our elected officials is definitely something that brings us to feeling more comfort in knowing that you guys are out here and we're seeing these measures come before you so quickly. As you can see, I am here with some of my Downtown Topeka Safe and Clean Task Force. So we have Chelsea Houston, Nick Zaitis, Stephen Smith, Ken Scott's also here, and I'm sure you've heard from our chair, Seth Wagner, in the past as well. Some of the things we know that this is not your guys' fight alone. Clean and Safe is an initiative in downtowns that is at least 20 years old and documented in international downtown associations all over the world. So we realize that this is not something that you guys have to fight alone. This was something we were going to roll out in our third quarter, but in an effort to be proactive, we decided to actually get it going in the first quarter because we saw a rise in what was occurring downtown. Since then, we've begun a camera database. We have eliminated with volunteers only over 4,000 pounds of trash from our alleyways. We have begun the notify at downtowntopekainc.com where all of our businesses and residents can notify us of incidents to make sure we're keeping an up-to-date crime stats and heat maps on where problems are, whether they're reported or not to TPD. And we want you guys to know that you're not here alone. We are here to support you, and we support this measure being considered tonight. And in the future, we hope to collaborate further. And we have had tremendous results with Chief Wheelis and his staff coming to our meetings as well. We appreciate all you've done, and we look forward to working with you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ken Scott.
Good evening. My name is Ken Scott. I've worked downtown for 35 years between Average and Capitol Federal. I also served on the Downtown Foundation Board, the Downtown Topeka Inc. Board, the Safe and Clean Committee, which Ashley just mentioned, and also the Riverfront Committee. All of those committees are set up to promote Topeka, to make the lifestyle of Topeka much better. I can tell you, and you've heard before me, that we've got problems, and we understand that it's very difficult and very complicated, but I'm personally here tonight to thank you for taking an initiative, taking a hard look at what we have going. It is a difficult problem, but we can't put business at risk, and we can't put the community at risk with what is going on currently, and it's elevating. If you look at some of our great assets, the plaza, which is a new one and a recent one, and you heard Nick talk about the challenges there. We heard earlier about the challenges that have occurred on the Shunga Trail. The Shunga Trail is an amazing asset that runs through Topeka. The city's had some new initiatives that's connected the trail for biking and other things. We just redid Quincy right out here to help tie into that. And yet, the Shunga Trail is a real difficult place for the public to enjoy. So I applaud you for what you're about to do and all of the thinking and hard work that's going into this, and we really appreciate all you do for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all the people we had signed up. We are still under discussion. It is my understanding that this could be possible action tonight, or whatever the body decides to do. So I will ask the body if there's a motion or a recommendation for the chair to entertain. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we were to pass this tonight, is there a timeline that we'd have to wait if we wanted to make some amendments to it?
Yes, so under our rules, once you pass something, it can't be reconsidered for 4 months, I believe, is the rule. I would say if you would give me a week to make sure you have a clean draft with all of the proposed amendments, that would be helpful. Otherwise, it would be helpful for me if I could summarize where I think you're at so that I can make sure that all of these provisions are in here as I have hand scratched all over the ordinance. I believe that you were discussing the ordinance introduced by Deputy Mayor Dobler, Councilman Duncan, and Valdivia Alcala, although there's not currently a motion on the floor. Potentially as amended to include language that says unless otherwise allowed in city code, these are the areas that camping's not allowed. And then within the 500 feet of the center line of any trail, including levee trails, or within 50 feet of the center line of any sidewalk. That was in your packet. Then in the camping definition section of 9.45.350 is where I believe it would be most appropriate to add language that camping does not include camping on a property by the owner of record for the parcel for a period not to exceed 10 days. Additionally, I would recommend 3 other definitional changes, just to add definitions to what is a levee. We used a levee means the waterworks levee unit, the South Topeka unit, and I can pass out these definitions because I've made copies for all of you. The Oakland unit and the North Topeka unit, as well as defining what the levee critical zone is, which means 500 feet from the center line to the land side of a levee and 300 feet from the center line of the levee to the water's edge. And then finally, a definition of trail, which would mean the trails conveyed to Shawnee County pursuant to City of Topeka contract number 41460, which includes Deer Creek Trail, Shoulder Trail, Shunga Trail, and Landon Trail. I think that's where you are all at.
Councilman Kell and then Deputy Mayor.
On the 10 days, is that per year, 10 days a month? They could literally put up a tent, walk away for a day, come back and set it down again. So I think we need to have some type of wording in there in a time frame. And then Councilwoman Ortiz's question, I think, kind of spurred this. How long do we have to wait for an effective date for this to be and be enforceable?
That is the other part that I forgot to mention. In talking with staff, we'd recommend that you do a delayed effective date of 30 to 60 days to give us time to allow Carrie's team to try to find housing, to get people off wait lists, to talk with the people to make sure that we have a plan rather than it just going into immediate effect.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I would make the motion that essentially would include what the original measure plus the additions that the city attorney outlined. 60 days might be a good number for this to take effect, but we can certainly, what I want to do is make a motion and then certainly would be open to any friendly amendments that might be added to that. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor.
Second?
You wish a second?
Second?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second, yes? Yes.
It's second by Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Yeah.
Councilman Kell.
I don't know what anyone else's viewers are, but it kind of, that 10 days kind of, I think we got skipped over there was, what is 10 days? Because like I said, they can do 10 days, pull up stakes and put it right back down again on the 12th day. Or, so we need to, like 10 days in a month, 10 days in a year, something, we need to have a definition there.
Deputy Mayor.
I would accept a friendly amendment that 10 days could be, you could say something like 10 days within any 60-day period, not to exceed 10 days within any 6-month period, or something like that. I don't know what makes sense, but certainly you could put some time limits on there.
Councilwoman Hiller.
I would suggest there's been some really good conversation this evening, but, you know, the city attorney's suggestion that maybe she be given some time to simply write that up, I understand that, but I think that it would be better to wait a week so that we're voting on something that is specific rather than unformed yet. So that kind of input I wanted to offer. I also, what I'm hearing, and I thank you so much, everybody from downtown, because there's been a lot of conversation about other districts, but there's been plenty happening in private property and with the ordinances that we already have. I got an email right before this meeting from one of my constituents who said, yes, we really need that about doorways and alleys and so on. We already have that. You know, there was some suggestions for something new, but, you know, all the devil's in the details, if you will. It's in the enforcement. And so you heard some powerful testimony this evening about the consequences too. I want to make sure that we do something that will work. I also know that in my district, we've had, and I can't remember whether it's property maintenance code or zoning, where somebody was letting somebody live in an RV on a residential site, and we teamed up with police and code, and they told them they couldn't stay there and got them out. And so if we're overlooking ordinances that we already have, whether we pass something new or not, I sure hope that we get back to taking care of these kinds of things. I too have had the issue of somebody on private property, and I know that the practice for a while was to ask people if they had permission, and if they said yes and they couldn't find the owner to say, no, that's not true, there was a default that they did have permission. And I've certainly been hoping as we move down this aisle that the reverse could be true legally, that if we can't get that owner to affirm, as Councilman Duncan was referencing, I think a little bit earlier, that kind of the reverse of what was happening before, that if we can't get them to affirm within 24 hours, if those people who are staying on the private property can't tell us who that person is and give us contact information, and we can't affirm that they do have permission, that we can default, set it as policy or procedure, that we default assume that they don't have permission. Because what we've got is people popping up all over, and I understand the reason to prohibit from the places that are discussed, but I also am very supportive of thinking, you talk much more broadly than I had in my notes about recreational camping and people just being able to camp in their backyards. I had discussed with city attorney earlier today, you know, something that goes back to just using the term permitting, and just anybody who's someplace more than 3 days, she's got it written up, I think, but that has to apply for a permit with the city. And they don't get the permit if they're not taking care of the site. Part of why things have gotten so bad is we're not jumping on this right away. And so they're ending up in huge messes and cleanups. Again, that's procedure. We've got ordinances against all those things, but somehow we're letting it get out of hand. And if it's not on our public land, if we're going to allow it someplace else or on certain campsites, we still have to deal with those issues. And so I just hope that we'll accommodate all the dimensions of this as we move forward.
I'd like to move forward with this. We've had discussion, and there's a motion on the floor with a second. If you'll please repeat what we will be voting on, make sure.
You want me to do it, or you want to? I did have a question. Was the friendly amendment accepted to 10 days within any 6-month period? Was that accepted by the first and the second? Okay. Then I believe the amendment on the floor is the ordinance in your packet as introduced by Deputy Mayor Dobler and Councilman Duncan and Valdivia Alcala, as amended by suggested as the city attorney. Maybe you should read. I'm sorry.
I was going to do a short version.
Okay, you can do a short version.
The ordinance that they introduced with your language, the added friendly amendment of the 10 days within a 6-month period.
Correct. So it's the ordinance, except it makes it unlawful to camp unless as allowed by other places in city code within all our current areas, plus within 500 feet of any trail, including levee trails, or within 50 feet of the center line of any sidewalk. And then it adds to the definition section of the code that camping does not include camping on a property by the owner of record for a period not to exceed 10 days within any 6-month period, as well as adds a definition for levee, critical zone, and trail.
Very good. Okay, so our vote is
And
to-
it has a delayed implementation of 60 days.
Our vote is to either pass or not pass the ordinance as amended.
Correct.
Okay,
And the mayor does not vote on this.
correct.
Okay. So we're good. Okay,
Can you call the roll, please?
Council members Ortiz,
Yes, but I think I have something else to add, but I'll go ahead and vote for it.
Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
Hofer,
Yes.
Hiller,
Yes.
and Valdivia Aqua.
Yes.
We have 9 yes, motion carries.
Okay. I want to thank the governing body and the public for their comments on this issue. We'll move on now to agenda item 5, non-action items. Brenda, if you'll read.
A is discussion concerning the 2023 Standard Traffic Ordinance, the STO, and local amendments amending Topeka Municipal Code Sections 1015, 010, and 020.
Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and governing body, Ms. Stanley, the city attorney, will walk us through the STO as well as 5B, the discussion on the UPOC also.
I did, I was like, oh no, it's me again. But, okay, so this agenda item, Mr. Mayor and governing body, it deals with our standard traffic ordinance. This is becoming one of those items that you do every year. After several years of not keeping up with state law updates, we have made it a regular practice to adopt the newest version when it is published by the league. Every year, the standard traffic ordinance is updated by the League of Municipalities to include changes to state law. This year, there were very few traffic changes. The legislature was busy doing other things. There were only 3 changes to the standard traffic ordinance this year, and one of them was requested by the city of Topeka. That is in new section 194, which allows you to no longer have to serve the mandatory 5-day jail time for driving on a suspended license. The other 2 changes deal with lighting equipment and spilling loads on highways. Lighting equipment, previously, if you wanted to have ground effect lighting on your vehicle, it could only be neon in color. It can now be any color except red or flashing. So you can't pretend to be a public safety vehicle, but you can be other colors if you would like to install that on your vehicle. The other issue goes back to a change from a couple years ago that was accidentally made and various things, but it has to do with spilling loads on highways. I think this is more a county issue rather than inside the city limits of Topeka. However, it exempts trucks, trailers, and trailers hauling cotton bales from this provision when certain requirements are met. So if you spill your cotton bales on the city of Topeka and you are doing it in the course of your agriculture, you're exempted from that particular section. And those are the only 3 new sections to the standard traffic ordinance this year. And then we recommend that we continue our local changes that have been made in previous years. Happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions? Proceed.
Okay, that was discussion only tonight, so now we are moving on to the next agenda item if you would like to.
Next non-action item, you'll read.
Have discussion concerning the 2023 Uniform Public Offense Code, UPOC, and local amendments amending Topeka Municipal Code Section 905080.
Similar to how you just heard, I guess I should have said it's the 50th anniversary of the standard traffic ordinances this year, so our traffic code is 50 years old. Our Uniform Public Offense Code is not quite as old. This is the 39th edition of the Uniform Public Offense Code. Again, this is one that we update the changes every year to make sure that we have that we are in compliance with state law so that there's no ambiguity. There are more changes, not really substantive changes, but there are more changes that you can read through there. Most of them are definitional changes that have to do with some of the new offenses. The new offenses in the code include battery against a healthcare provider. This is a new offense that the healthcare providers have been asking for a couple years now and was made into law. So it is a Class A non-person violation to commit battery against a healthcare provider when they are performing their job duties. The next provision that was amended is 3.6, unlawful restraint. The league's language did not actually mirror state law's language, so they have fixed that error. So it will now exempt all law enforcement of the state of any political subdivision from unlawful restraint as required by state law. Section 3.8, violation of a protection from abuse order. This includes cleanups to the statutes regarding protection from abuse orders. When this legislation was introduced, our domestic violence prosecutor reviewed all the protection from abuse language and made sure to weigh in on the proposed legislation as appropriate. The league has deleted the word "or" in 3.8. We've also they've amended the definition of stalking in 3.13 to include utilizing tracking systems to make sure that technology advances and it's easier to stalk people, that our laws appropriately are advanced as well. Next, we move on to life-saving devices. The next several sections are simply amended because the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism has changed its name. It is now the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, which requires several sections of the UPOC to be changed as well. The next significant change is in 5.6, purchase or possession of cigarettes or tobacco products by a minor. Federal law raised that from 18 to 21 a few years ago. The state of Kansas has caught up and raised the minimum age from 18 to 21 to purchase, attempt to purchase, or possess cigarettes, e-cigarettes, or tobacco products. We do have a local ordinance on tobacco 21. We do still need to adopt this section because our ordinance focused on selling, not purchasing. Criminal trespass has been updated to include healthcare facilities in line with the new battery against a healthcare facility. Criminal hunting has been clarified and amended to state that criminal hunting violations are non-person violations. Counterfeit airbag violations are now an offense. Apparently that is a problem in the state of Kansas. So we have criminalized knowingly or intentionally manufacturing, importing, distributing, selling, or offering to sell or install or reinstall an airbag, in case that comes up. Interference with a law enforcement officer has been updated to clarify some language. State law updated that, and so the law has been changed appropriately dealing with motor vehicles. And then finally, operating aircrafts under the influence, that has been updated. It's only been a couple years that operating an aircraft under the influence has actually been illegal in the state of Kansas, but it is now on the books and it is a Class A violation, so don't do that.
And you can't operate a boat, right?
Correct.
Do you want?
Correct. But aircrafts just got skipped, I guess. And so those are all of the uniform public offense changes for this year.
Any questions for the city attorney? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move now to public comment. I have 3 persons signed up to speak this evening. Mr. Jay Patterson. Or, yeah, Miss Jay Patterson.
I'm a female Jay.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jay Patterson, and I live here in Topeka. I want to discuss disregard to be ignored. Citizens of Topeka's safety was ignored this month. An incident, quotations, that happened on the Shunga Trail. In the paper, they said that the victim was taken to the hospital in serious condition, but not life-threatening. And then that was all we heard. So, as Topeka is, people started telling me, well, this is who it was, and it was a woman, and she was raped, and she was beaten, and she was this, and I was just, what? What? And we're not knowing this? Because it's on the Shunga Trail.
right there. People, my granddaughter, 13, her buddies are always running around the trail and kind of in those woodsy areas. So I was so upset. Okay, I tried to contact WIBW because I don't get the other channels on my TV right now. So I emailed one of the female newscasters. No reply, no reply. Couldn't even tell me, no, I can't discuss it. Just ignored me. So then I went to Facebook. And guess what happens on Facebook? You mention something like this, and I have hundreds and hundreds of comments. Not only just being upset, a lot of people didn't even know that this had happened on the trail. This was a very dangerous injury and rape. I mean, she was battered. I'm a rape victim, so I'm triggered by all this kind of stuff. You just go, how are you ignoring this? So, Facebook, other victims are telling me their stories about things that have happened and how they've been ignored or nobody listened to them. But we did hear about a woman bit on the leg by a dog. Boy, that was all over, and the whole, you see nobody's following me in here telling my story, but they were all here supporting her being bit by a dog on the Shunga Trail. Nobody's here about the rape. But boy, we know about the lady who climbed the tree and got her cat out. That was big news. And we have KU, K-State, the Chiefs. I'm sick of it. This was a violent crime that happened on the trail that nobody reported and told people that it was unsafe for 2 weeks until they arrested the man who did it. Then he was charged with aggravated criminal sodomy. We know that's bad. Aggravated battery and aggravated rape. Now, for 2 weeks, nobody knew this, and there are people on the trail. We don't know where that guy is. I don't know. What are the police doing? I don't know. I'm not blaming anybody. I just wanted to know that we should have known that this danger was going on. So, what's the protocol regarding what is the police allowed to tell us? And what is the media? What I was hearing was the police said, no, you cannot report this, and therefore they didn't say anything. But I also heard that the news people were very upset they couldn't report it. This is just what I'm being told, all right? So I feel like we need to feel safe, especially on the trail. That is such a wonderful place for our town, and we need to feel protected. So what I would like to know is what's protocol, and also last but not least, don't ever say, and you hear about a rape and then somebody says, well, she shouldn't have had her ear pods in. I've heard this about this rape victim many times, and that is so wrong. It doesn't matter if you have your ear pods in. You do not deserve to have happen what happened to her. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ken Outen. Robert Secord.
To the Topeka City Council, men and women, my name is Robert Secord, lifelong citizen and taxpayer of Topeka. Just wanted to ask, by show of hands, how many of you knew before today that a serial attacker was probably roaming the woods of Shunga Park in the city of Topeka? Anybody know that? Nobody knows that, right? Okay, my granddaughter was brutally assaulted, her life threatened, restrained unwillingly for more than 6 hours in her Brookwood apartment on 29th Street. She had just moved in last week. Any of you knew that? You don't know that she was brutally attacked. She had just moved in. My granddaughter, Heaven, was befriended by Sean Michael Ward, homeless man living in Shunga homeless community. Long rap sheet, DA has case where he has assaulted his ex, restraining her for 36 hours, beating and stabbing her, and he is known to the Topeka Police Department. On Friday, 9/8, Heaven's neighbor, Clinton, and his wife were threatened by Sean. The police were called. Clinton told Officer Shawn had been seen in Heaven's apartment and thought he might be in there. However, officers did not check or knock on the apartment door. Heaven did not know what had just happened, and Shawn acted fine. She had known him, he had befriended her earlier in the week when she just moved in that week. She allowed Shawn to fall asleep in her apartment. When he awoke, he started arguing with Heaven, telling her it was his apartment. He grabbed her by her hair, started slamming her into the walls and into the floors, beat her unconscious several times, and was awakening her by dragging her across the floor. Heaven woke up and crawled out of her, When he awoke, he started arguing with Heaven, telling her the apartment was his. He grabbed her by her hair and started slamming her into the walls and into the floor, beat her unconscious several times, and was awakened by him dragging her across the floor. She said every time she tried to crawl towards the door, he would drag her back, threatening to kill her by stabbing her or cutting her up. Earlier Saturday morning, Shawn had left Heaven unconscious on the floor. Heaven woke up, crawled out of her door, and collapsed in a little chair in front of her apartment. Her neighbor Clinton found her and called the police. I was told it was called a simple battery call, no emergency. Heaven was in the hospital from Saturday morning and overnight for observation. Neighbor Clinton told us Shawn and two other men returned shortly after the police left and walked by the apartment. Who knows what would have happened to Heaven if she was still unconscious in the apartment. We got her home Sunday afternoon. She has been traumatized. Shawn Michael Ward has not been apprehended and could be somewhere near you and your family. All women living alone should be very concerned because unfortunately the TPT does not seem to care. In the last 4 days, I've heard more excuses with little action to protect the citizens of Topeka. I can't even get a news channel to run the story. Please help me understand how this can happen in Topeka. And none of you know anything about it, do you? Because the Topeka Police Department has done nothing. They interviewed a traumatized girl and then told me that her story was because you couldn't keep it straight. He beat the living out of my granddaughter, folks. You ought to see her. All you have to do is look on Facebook. I got plenty of pictures on there of her. It's a pretty pathetic city when this can happen to a little girl. And the police department is more hard on her and me than on this piece of running around the city.
Sir?
Yes.
Please.
I'm sorry.
I understand you have every right to be upset.
Yes.
But please, this is a public hearing.
Okay.
There are people watching, and your conduct exemplifies you as well. So you've brought us a very important thing, and we will address it. But your time is up. If you would like more time, I will give it to you. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll move now from public comments to announcements. Brenda?
For the September 19th agenda, we have one proclamation, we have two board appointments, we have two presentations, including the Topeka Fire Department Medical Response Assessment and the Topeka Rescue Mission Update. Consent agenda, we have a noise exception, we have an ordinance for the Dynamic Core TIF District removing neighborhood revitalization program properties. We have a professional services contract. Action items include the ordinance for utility bill real estate liens for 2023, and then we have an ordinance for approving the STO and another for the UPOC. And we have a resolution for conditional use permit for St. Peter de Paul Orthodox Christian Church located at Southeast 38th Street and Adams. And then we have another ordinance for the Topeka Prime Sports for a planned unit development at 3601 Southwest 33rd Street.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
You did the right thing by passing that camping ordinance. It's a start in the right direction. There's a lot more things that we have to do and the community have to do, but that's a good start. So thank you for doing that, and that's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. I was in Pueblo for the past several days, and I did get a text about this individual woman and the brutal assault. And I did forward it for an update to the chief, and he let me know where the case was as much as he could, and I didn't hear the other part. So I think that it's important, city manager, as all of this unrolls, rolls out, we know that once we pass this ordinance, it'll have, this 60-day marker. We have to have some kind of plan as to how this is going to roll out, and we need to share it with the public so that they can have some assurance. And I don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm not saying that we get all freaked out and scared, but there is so much fear right now. There's so much fear on our trails. And so we're doing the best we can right now at this particular moment in time. But even I am requesting an update to know from that time when the ordinance would actually come into effect, what is being done in coordination with the county on the trails. We need to have an understanding, not just as a governing body, we need to let the people know, and that through this meeting and do a press release, and then hopefully the media picks it up. Because how can we not? So that I wanted to say that on that. And then I wanted to thank everybody that showed up for the Oakland Community Garden first ever free pig roast and free meal that we had this past Saturday. I wasn't there. I did hear that Councilwoman Ortiz went out and got some barbecue, and everything was just so beautiful, and we had violins playing, and everything was free, and everybody decorated the garden, and I was calling them from Pueblo going, okay, how's it going, how's it going? And they served almost 100 people, and they roasted the pig out there in the Oakland Garden, and we're hoping that we can do this every year and get the word out better, because we were hoping for a couple of hundred, but we got about 100 served, so that's good. And then the last thing I wanted to say is tomorrow is my mom and dad's, both my parents are still living, is their 65th wedding anniversary. So mom and dad, happy anniversary. Tomorrow is my brother and his wife's anniversary as well. Happy anniversary. And my goddaughter, Ahada, it's her 16th birthday. So happy birthday, Mari, mija. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Ortiz? Did she get off? Okay. Councilman Emerson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple pieces of good news for Highland Park. Last Friday, they had their homecoming parade, and luckily I was not in the parade. But I actually wanted to thank our police officers. There was a lot of police officers there assisting with the parade, and that was just them being there with all their lights on and stuff, I think adds a lot of festivities to the parade. So I really appreciated that, Chief. And also a lady who I do not know, but I would love to know, named Susan Guffey, left $5 million to Highland Park. Yeah. And I am scouring my family tree I'm sure there's some way we're related. And in a related note, Topeka High is waiting for Miss Ortiz to make a similar donation. So that's it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some people you just can't help. You just can't help them, I just want to say that the deer are out and they're on the move. And I hit one Thursday night, first deer I ever hit. So I just wanted to tell my colleagues to be careful there. Also, I wanted to thank staff on the budget. I think the budget was very, very easy. I am disappointed that we're not going until midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock as in the past years, but it just seems like it's getting easier and easier. So I wanted to say that. In all seriousness, I do want to thank Tony. He is an alumni to his heart. I was sitting at the Highland Park High School homecoming and they shouted him out and I'm like, how the hell did he get a shout out? But it just goes for all the hard work that he does, and he cares about the kids, and I think that's awesome. I kind of marvel at that, and I know me and him go back and forth, and I couldn't believe that in a letter to Dr. Anderson he put that I know it's great to be a Scot, but I'll give him that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Kell.
I was surprised by Councilwoman Valdivia-Alcala's comment about her parents in 65 years, and that is a major accomplishment. My wife and I just did 20, and it feels a lot more than 20. So anyone that makes it to 65 is that's some love right there. Ms. Patterson brought up a good point, I think. I kind of just looked through their city website. I think we need to find a spot on our website for all media releases, because we release stuff to the media, but not necessarily the media may not pick up those stories. So I think anything that's released to the media should also be released to our citizens and have easy access to it. So somewhere, we do have a news area, but it doesn't seem like it has any what we receive in the city as news releases. So I think we need to have a section on our website and then education of the public through social media and other aspects to show that we have those media releases. Because like I said, if we're releasing it to the media, we should be releasing it to the public. Finally, it's time to get your ducks in a row. Migrate over to the duck race. It is the 28th annual Sertoma Great Topeka Duck Race this Saturday. You can go to the duck race, www.duckrace.com/Topeka. Make sure you get a duck load of and help out many great causes. You can go to the website to see the causes. I got all these from my Ductionary. And I better get the duck out of here before I get slapped on the bill or tarred and feathered. Oh, and this is my attempt to take over for Councilwoman Nager, since she won't have, we won't have her signs anymore. I'm gonna take that over for her, and, So I just need you to sign my bill here.
Oh, bad. I'll quickly move on to Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to express my gratitude to staff for all of the hard work that has been put into not only the budget, but the mapping system was fantastic. As somebody who doesn't know anything about data in that way, I really, really appreciate it being shown to us in that way, because it was very, very easy to follow. I'm glad that we passed that camping ordinance, and I look forward to making more measures in the future to make this a safer, friendlier, and better city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Dogler.
Thank you, Mayor. Apparently Councilman Kell found AI and now has it writing jokes for him.
This is all natural right here. I'm very funny.
I wanted to say, we have police officers downstairs, upstairs, that take care of us every week. They take care of the courts during the day. One of them is retiring, Conrad Unruh, who's always a smiling face, happens to be not a close neighbor, but lives just down the street from us, so know him and his wife Brenda very well. Just want to say thanks for all the years of service, not only with the TPD, but also keeping us safe. It's always nice to have somebody out there when it's dark and maybe it's been a little contentious. Maybe we've had some some public comment or something that makes you wonder who might be waiting out there. So it's great to have that with all of the folks that help us.
He's at the door.
I know,
Pardon?
I know.
Oh, he is at the door. Thank you. I did not realize he was standing there. It makes it even better. See, I said all those nice things. I didn't even know you were there. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Duncan.
Couple things, Mayor. Just in regards to the public comment we heard this evening, I guess two things. Obviously, not everything's going to get reported, every little detail in the news, and some people are going to report otherwise. I will say about the incident that Ms. Patterson talked about, it did happen. It was reported. I will say to their credit, our police department, once it was reported, found the person, arrested the person, and that person's being charged. Since then, both the county and the city have stepped up our patrols on those trails. And tonight we passed a camping ordinance, and in part to protect those trails and remove people off of them. So in regards to that, I mean, I think those are exactly the issues that we've tried to react to and be proactive on and move forward with. To Mr. Secord, I guess, and I'm sure he's already preparing it, but obviously it'd be nice to have some report to the rest of us, just to let, as much as can be, similar to maybe what Councilmember Valdivia-Alcal had, just so the rest of us can understand what may be going on in that situation. It would be appreciated. I am glad that we are going to deal with the traffic ordinances, because now that I can put whatever color I want under my car, I will be taking suggestions for what colors you think I should put under there. Let my wife know. In regards to the camping ordinance tonight, I say this all the time, maybe I'll make it into a bumper sticker. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to definitely see hiccups early and need to course correct. But as I like to remind everybody, we meet 3 times a month for a reason. It means that we can course correct pretty quickly if we so choose. And I think sometimes we forget that we have that flexibility and need to just keep that in front of us as we move forward. And lastly, this weekend is the Kansas Book Festival at Washburn University. You can go to kansasbookfestival.com and check out the actual schedule of events over there at Washburn, and I encourage everyone to do so. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilwoman Hofer.
I don't have much, but I do want to thank staff, everyone who worked on the budget, which means just about everybody in the city, and everyone who worked on the camping ordinance. All that work is truly appreciated. And, oh yes, thank you to the water department. We had a water main break. It's took a while, but I think we've got it taken care of, and I know that staff has been working long and hard hours trying to keep up. The weather has not cooperated, and it doesn't look like it may cooperate for a bit yet, but I appreciate all of those people that are out fixing the lines, probably even tonight. It is truly appreciated that we have people who can take care of those breaks and get us back having water again. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to repeat and back up the thanks to the finance staff, as well as the legal staff and others who contributed to both of these ordinances that we passed tonight. And I too had the water crews down because I didn't have any water out in my area, but I know Sylvia even reached out about being able to spell the crews that had worked so long and worked out a trade-off that it sounds like worked out pretty well, but certainly let them all know how much we appreciate that they're out there. You can watch those Facebook and Nextdoor posts where I haven't had water for 10 hours, what's up with that? But somebody was there on the street trying to fix it, and so we're all lucky for that and grateful. A shout out to the folks who organized Touch a Truck. I think it was something like the 20th anniversary this year, but it was, again, downtown on the streets and in the plaza, and very well attended, and a wonderful opportunity for both the companies that have those big trucks to let kids and grown-ups come touch them and sit in them and get their pictures taken, but it's also a really great event. shout out again to my DTI people. The clean and safe thing is a lot of work, and it's ugly, dirty work, but they've made that commitment to each other and to the city, and I'm really proud of them and hope that we can support them in the challenges, both particularly the downtowns that I deal with, but in the manner that they all deserve. The question came up during the conversation about private properties, and I've also had a question since we talked about the homeless situation. Just so everybody knows, shout out to John Chardine and his staff at Property Maintenance Code Compliance. They have stepped up where people are camping on privately owned properties. And if there are code violations, we've talked about this kind of thing before, but if it's trashy, whatever, if they are writing up the owners, since the owners are responsible for those properties and have given permission for somebody to be there, and they're having some success with that. So that is an option where we are running into in our neighborhoods, private properties that people are allowing people to camp on. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. I'll be brief. We're pushing up on 10 o'clock, and we do have one executive session that we have to go into, but Deputy Mayor jumped the gun on me, Conrad, because I wanted you to come up here so that I could personally thank you from one retired policeman to another for your years of service. And thank you for being here all the time. We really appreciate it. He's going to arrest you. He's going to arrest you. Does he want to? Conrad, we go way back. I remember when you came on. Good luck in your future. Okay, so we do have a need for one executive session. We will exceed our 10 o'clock.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to extend our meeting to the past 10 o'clock to the end of our agenda.
Second. Motion and a second. If you'll take the roll, please.
Okay, council members Emerson,
Yes.
Kale,
Yes.
Mager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yeah.
Duncan,
No.
Hofer,
Yes.
Mayor Padilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Pillar,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
and Ortiz.
No.
It needs 8, right? It needs 8.
We have 8 yes, motion carries.
Okay, it barely passed. You guys.
Okay, we still have time for the city attorney to read the need for executive session.
The motion would be to recess into executive session not to exceed 20 minutes to discuss the city's cybersecurity pursuant to KSA 754319B12. The open meeting will resume in the city council chambers. The following staff may be necessary for the governing body and its deliberation: interim city manager Neinstadt, Director Stahl, and other staff he deems necessary.
Okay, you've heard the need for executive session? So moved. Second. Motion and seconded from Councilman Dobler and Councilman Emerson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. We will recess. We'll take about a 10-minute recess before we go into discussion.
Extend.
A little bit, 10 minutes. You gotta come out.
Come on, people.
Walking around and waving?
Okay, we've completed our discussion under executive session. No action's been taken. No further business comes before this body. This meeting is adjourned. Ta-da!